Chapter 317. There is no door in this world that cannot be opened. If there really is, then we can just tear down the wall. Gu Family Ancestral Teachings. Chapter 4, Section Onis. Guhan's method was very simple. Since I can't do anything to the door, I'll deal with the wall. When the builders were proud of their efforts to create an indestructible door that no one could break, they would often ignore the existence of the wall. They didn't know that the door was attached to the wall. When the door was much harder than the wall, the relationship between the two would be reversed. At that time, the door would become the wall, and the wall would become the door that was easier to break. After typing so many words, the meaning was very simple. Guhan picked up his King of Use Gojian's sword and cut a big hole in the wall next to the Gate of Hell. The process was very easy. Guhan didn't even use 80% of his sword essence before he successfully pierced through the wall and cut out a hole half the size of a person. That works too. I Ching and Assam were dumbfounded. They suddenly felt as if their intelligence had been hit 10 times harder. You can't play it like this. What are you waiting for? Come on in. Guhan took the lead and walked into the temple. I won't go in. I'm having a good time here, so I won't go in. Assam smiled in a flattering manner. It was truly difficult for a cat to smile in such a flattering manner. I Ching opened his mouth to say something, but then he heard Guhan's voice coming from inside the hole. I Ching, bring Yuan Ko in. We need someone who understands the inside of the temple. Be obedient and walk by yourself. I Ching's white iron sword slapped Assam's head. Assam was helpless, knowing that he couldn't refuse these two terrifying humans. He could only obediently walk in front of I Ching and enter the temple with him. Behind the Gate of Hell was a rather long corridor. On both sides of the corridor were various murals. However, these murals were no longer about the gods bestowing gifts to humans. Instead, they were pictures of various monsters. Guhan also found a portrait of a cat slave. That's my home. The cat slave, Assam, looked at the murals on the wall in a daze. What home? This is just a mural. I Ching was somewhat puzzled. No, that's Assam's home. Assam said firmly. The two surrounding walls are actually the homes of Assam and all the slaves of the three gods. After a series of laborious explanations from Assam, I Ching finally understood that a cat slave like Assam didn't need to live in a real house. They only needed to live in the murals that belonged to them. These murals were painted with divine power. Not only was it comfortable to live in, but it could also extend one's life. According to what you said, each of the monster murals here represents a real slave. Guhan looked at the endless murals, as well as the countless monsters on the murals, and could not help but shiver. According to Guhan's estimation, there were at least 5,000, if not 10,000, monster murals here. Didn't this mean that at their peak, the three gods of Egypt had more than 5,000 Yuan Ko troops under them? Moreover, when Guhan carefully observed these murals, he found murals of powerful species such as the Grim Reaper, Cerberus, Scorpion Soldiers, Chimeras, and so on. These Yuan Ko were almost all dragon level or above Yuan Ko, which was the strength of a famed sword-level swordsman or above. He really didn't know how that immortal-level swordsman had killed so many powerful Yuan Ko troops and 3 Egyptian gods. How could there be so many? Assam rolled his eyes. There are less than 100 of us servants. It's Lady Isis who feels that there are too few murals on the wall, and it's embarrassing. The wall is so big, but it looks empty. Those who come to play mahjong with Isis will probably make fun of us. That's why Isis herself painted the entire wall. It looked so domineering. Those who came to visit wouldn't dare to have any ill intentions towards us when they saw so many slaves. But it's all over in the end. In other words, most of the murals are empty. They are empty houses with no slaves to live in. I Ching shook his head in disdain. I still don't understand. This is a complete waste of time and energy. It's meaningless. What's there to not understand? Guhan pursed his lip. Just look at the study of those big bosses. There are so many books on the shelf. There's a complete collection of world-famous works, dozens of versions of the Bible, and a meter-high pile of Das Kapital and 24 histories. How many do you think they've read? Are they really interested in reading a complete set of Das Kapital and 24 histories? They might as well watch Lady Sword. After complaining about the murals, Gohan and I Ching finally walked into a hall after a long corridor. This hall was more than 10 times bigger than the one at the entrance. In the south, north, and east of the hall, there were 3 huge statues that were more than 10 meters tall. These statues should be the statues of the 3 gods, Anubis, Isis, and Batet. In the east was a tall man with a jackal's head. He wore an Egyptian robe, and he held a scepter in his left hand and a scale in his right. On one end of the scale was a heart, and on the other end was a feather. According to Egyptian legend, Anubis was a god of hell, and had the ability to weigh a person's good and evil. When a person died, Anubis would take out the person's heart and place it on one end of the scale, and on the other end was a feather. If the feather was as heavy as the heart, it meant that the person was good and had never done bad things when they were alive, and they could ascend to heaven. If the heart was heavier than the feather, then the person's soul was sinful, and Anubis would throw it into hell and devour it by Cerberus. The statue in the south was a very beautiful young woman. She had a kind and delicate face, a crown on her head, and a scepter in her hand. This scepter was also called the Knot of Isis, a scepter that symbolized resurrection. It could resurrect the soul of the dead, provided that the body was intact before death. This was why Egyptian nobles and pharaohs liked to turn themselves into mummies. They believed that as long as their bodies did not decay, they would be saved by Isis sooner or later. Their souls would return to their bodies, and they would become the king of Egypt again. The statue in the north was a simple cat. Yes, there was no setting of a cat's head or a cat's body. This god was a simple cat, just like the black cat mural that Gohan had seen at the entrance. This is the place where we worship the 3 gods. Assam's eyes were full of memories. Our Lord Bastet's servants often had disputes with Lord Anubis's servants. We always thought that cats were the greatest creatures in the world, but they believed that dogs were the greatest creatures. Because of these disputes, we fought each other, and Lady Isai's servants laughed at us. Halfway through Assam's sentence, Gohan knocked him on the head with the blade of her sword. I'm not interested in listening to you reminiscing about the past. Let me ask you, where is the most mysterious place in this temple? Well, according to common sense, the most mysterious place in the temple was the place where the treasures were hidden. The most mysterious place has to be the divine kingdom of the 3 gods. Legend has it that the back of the 3 statues is connected to the divine kingdom of the 3 gods. The 3 gods usually live in the divine kingdom, and other than their closest servants, no one can enter the divine kingdom of the 3 gods, Assam said. You're not thinking of entering the divine kingdoms of the 3 gods, are you? That's impossible. Without the divine power of the 3 gods, it's impossible to open the gate to their divine kingdoms. What's impossible about it? Have you forgotten about the gate from before? I Ching's tone was a little mocking, and Assam was speechless. Even now, when he recalled the scene of Gohan breaking through the wall, he felt that his intelligence had been seriously damaged. Gohan's first target was the statue of Anubis, because Anubis seemed to be the most powerful god in the temple, which could be seen from the position he was placed in. According to common sense, treasures were often placed in the territory of the most powerful god. So, Gohan decided to first find a way to enter Anubis' divine kingdom. Impossible, you can't open the divine kingdom of Lord Anubis. Seeing Gohan and I Ching circling around the statue of Anubis, Assam firmly believed that the gate of the gods could not be opened by mortals. The previous one was just an accident. Found it, I found it. Slap, slap. Assam's face was slapped hard again. He took the initiative to run to Guhan and I Ching's side, only to find that Guhan and I Ching were staring at Anubis buttocks. Well, to be precise, at a string of words on Anubis buttocks. It was a string of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic. Sir Military Governor, do you know these words? I Ching did not even know a few Chinese characters, let alone these ancient Egyptian words. How could I know ancient Egyptian words? Guhan shook his head and pulled a psalm to the word. It's okay, isn't there an Egyptian cat here? A psalm, take a look. What do these words mean? Let me see. Assam squinted his cat's eyes. It seemed that it was very difficult for him to decipher the words. Assam read out the whole sentence word by word. The kingdom of the gods can only those who have the balance of heaven can enter. The meaning of Assam's words was very simple. If one wanted to open the door to the divine kingdom, they had to find two things that could balance the scales. Chapter 3:18. It seems that the key to opening the god's kingdom lies on the scale in Anubis' hand. Guhan looked at the scale in Anubis' hand. It was a rather simple and primitive scale. There was a plate on each end of a cross. That was all. At first glance, one would feel that the scale was rough and frighteningly irregular. Even if one did not place anything on it, one end would still sink. However, if one observed the scale carefully, one would realize that the two plates were perfectly on the same level. There was not a single difference in height. This was sufficient to show that the scale was in a state of absolute balance. I only need to find two objects of the same weight and place them on the scale? Isn't that a little too simple? I Ching felt that this request was too simple. It was unbelievably simple. Do you think this is simple and easy to accomplish? Guhan's tone was full of ridicule. Can you tell me what we can find that has the same quality? This. I Ching subconsciously felt that he could say a lot of things. He just needed to place two identical objects on the two ends of the scale. However, when the words were at the tip of his tongue, he could not say anything for a while. It was impossible to find two objects that had the same quality in this world. Even if it was the same object produced on an assembly line, there would be slight differences in quality. It was impossible for them to be exactly the same. Moreover, they were in ruins. It was impossible to find two objects that had the same quality. However, I Ching did not want to admit that he could not find it. When he entered the door, he had already been shown off by Guhan's intelligence. I Ching was unwilling to accept this. He was in a state of hoping that he could turn the tables. Therefore, after thinking hard for a while, I Ching's mind flashed, and an idea came to him. I Ching grabbed a handful of hair from his head and handed it to Guhan. He smiled and said, "Come, use this. Pick one that is the same length." Needless to say, I Ching's hair was indeed a good idea. This was because hair grew according to the same genes. The thickness and density were about the same. As long as the length was the same, it would be almost identical. More importantly, the hair was light enough. A strand of hair weighed about 0.0004 grams. Two strands of hair with the same length, thickness, and density would probably have a difference in weight of about 1/10,000,000th of a gram. Such a difference was impossible to measure even with an accurate scale. Although Guhan still had some doubts about hair, there was nothing more appropriate than hair. Therefore, Guhan picked out two strands of I Ching's hair of the same length, and placed them on the two ends of the scale. As a result, the left side of the scale suddenly sank down, as if it was being pressed down by a strand of hair, as if it was weighed by 1,000 tons. F***ck, what kind of scale is this? I Ching's heart suffered a heavy blow. It's useless. Lord Anubis' scale is specially used to measure the weight of good and evil. It can even measure an illusory weight like good and evil, let alone two strands of hair, Assam said proudly, as if the scale was his. It seems that it is impossible for real items to pass the test of this scale. As long as there are two items, they will never be exactly the same in terms of quality. I Ching said thoughtfully after hearing Assam's words. But, if we don't use something that exists, what should we use to measure it? I Ching pulled at his hair in pain. Are we really going to find some good and evil thing to measure? It's useless. Even if you find something as illusory as good and evil, you can't be sure if good and evil are the same. In fact, the possibility of two people having the same good and evil throughout their lives is much smaller than the possibility of having the same quality. Gohan's words made I Ching a little listless. The whole thing seemed to have reached a dead end. Suddenly, Gohan asked Assam, Assam, does it mean that as long as the scale is balanced, the gate to the divine kingdom can be opened? Yes, but I'm not sure, because that's the literal meaning of the text. I don't know if God Anubis has any deeper meaning. That's fine, then it's easy. I have an idea. Gohan smiled and took out a small bottle from his dimensional pocket. He fiddled with the scale for a while before returning to I Ching's side. Wait 5 minutes, let's try again, Gohan said with a smile, as if he had found a way to balance the scale. Lord Military Governor, what did you do on the scale just now? I Ching asked curiously. I'm just keeping you in suspense. You'll know in 5 minutes. Gohan smiled but did not answer. I Ching had no choice but to wait with Gohan for 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, Gohan, who had been calculating the time, finally moved. He brought I Ching to the side of the scale and said to her, Come, sit on it. I Ching was stunned. She confirmed with Gohan that she did not hear wrongly. Yes, she did not hear wrongly. Gohan wanted I Ching to sit on a tray of the scale. Could it be that Lord Military Governor found something as heavy as me? That's impossible, right? Although I Ching's heart was filled with guesses and suspicions, she still obediently listened to Gohan's words and sat on the tray. I wonder what Lord Military Governor is using to balance his weight, I Ching silently guessed. Could it be that Lord Military Governor has some sort of duplication skill? There are so many types of sword maidens in the world. It's not impossible for sword maidens to have the ability to duplicate. Just as I Ching was guessing what method Gohan would use to find something as heavy as her, Gohan sat on the tray himself. Yes, that's right. Gohan sat on the other side of the scale all by himself. Oh my God, what's going on? I Ching would never believe that Gohan, who was a head taller and fatter than her, would weigh the same as her. In the end, something shocking happened. The scale, which was so sensitive that it could even detect the difference of 2 strands of hair, did not move at all. It was as if Gohan and I Ching's weight were exactly the same. What's going on? I Ching and Assam were once again bewildered like they were at the gate. They couldn't understand why the scales didn't change. While the two of them were still in a daze, the statue of Anubis began to move. The staff fell from his hand and smashed onto the ground. The ground shook, and then a circular opening suddenly appeared on the ground. From the opening, a faint red light shone out. Assam, is this the entrance to God's kingdom? Gohan asked Assam. What else could Assam do? He could only nod his head blankly. He could not understand how Gohan was able to maintain the balance of the scale. Lord Military Governor, how did you do it? Assam's confusion did not last long. I Ching could not hold back her curiosity and rushed to ask Gohan. Use this. Gohan passed a small bottle of something to I Ching. I Ching took a closer look and saw that on the bottle's label, there were 4 numbers written in standard song script, 1080. Below the number 1080, there was a line of extremely small words, Instant Strength Adhesive. What is this? Forgive I Ching for being used to living in a barren place like the desert. He didn't even know what adhesive was. It can be considered a type of glue. It is an evolved version of 502 from before the apocalypse. It has an extremely strong adhesive ability. Once it is stuck, even 2 trains won't be able to pull it apart, replied Gohan. This 1080 was actually a descendant of 502. Glue. I Ching once again felt the crushing of her intelligence. No wonder Gohan had used this bottle to fiddle with the scale. It turned out that he had used glue on the fulcrum of the scale. With the powerful adhesive effect of 1080, even if two elephants were to sit on the two ends of the scale, they would not be able to move the scale. Is that so? Assam wanted to cry, but no tears came out. He began to doubt his own life. He felt that he had lived for more than 200 years in vain. This was the pain of having his intelligence raped. Assam would rather have his body raped, or even his soul raped, but why did his intelligence have to be raped? I Ching's behavior was much more relaxed compared to when she was at the gate. She had already gotten used to Gohan's intellect. At the same time, she felt a deep admiration for Gohan. Women, regardless of whether they were the timid and helpless type or Wu Zetian, all of them yearned for men who could conquer them. It was the same for men. If they met a woman who could completely conquer them, they would become bronchitis. Facts had proven that Gohan had completely conquered I Ching, be it in terms of strength or intelligence. I Ching's heart began to palpitate. She thought that if she could be with Gohan forever, then she would be able to live freely, safely, and happily for the rest of her life. Alright, enough with the idle chatter. Since the gate of the God's kingdom was open, Gohan and I Ching entered the God's kingdom without any fear. Of course, although Assam was very unwilling, he was still dragged in by Gohan. Not to mention, Assam had given Gohan a lot of help and hints along the way. This fellow was useful. Anubis was the god of death in charge of hell. It was only natural that the god's kingdom of Anubis should be like the hell described in the legends, with flames, lava, and corpses everywhere. But what the hell was this place? Why was the god's kingdom of Anubis a boundless ice field filled with bones and flesh? Chapter 319. If Anubis's divine kingdom was a land of ice and snow, it would still be tolerable. However, the fact that the land of ice was filled with flesh and bones was intolerable. After all, the land of ice still had the smell of a forbidden zone. It could be used as a divine kingdom for the god of death. However, what was up with the fact that this divine kingdom was filled with flesh and bones? Have you ever seen flesh and bones growing out of the ground like weeds? Even if Anubis was a dog with a human body, this was too unsightly. Well, there was nothing to complain about. Anubis was a dog after all. We cannot use the standards of a human to judge him. The most important task after entering the divine kingdom was to find the secrets hidden within. Anubis's divine kingdom occupied a large area and there was no end to it. Gohan and I Ching walked for more than half an hour. All they saw was an unchanging ice field. There was nothing special or eye-catching about it. The situation was getting more and more tense. It had been more than 3 hours since Gohan entered the instance dungeon. In reality, it was probably around 2 a.m. Gohan still had to lead the Yaoguang sword faction in the challenge tomorrow. Thus, he needed to get enough sleep. However, judging by the current situation, it would appear that they would not be able to find any valuable clues even if they searched for another day and night. This divine kingdom was too big and too monotonous. As Gohan was worrying about the time, I Ching, who had been silent all this time, suddenly spoke up. "Sir Military Governor, I think I hear a strange sound." A strange sound? Hearing that, Gohan was stunned. Then, he calmed himself down and heard a very faint sound in the air. Only then did Gohan realize that he was in a state of confusion. In a situation where there were no clues, even the slightest movement could become a powerful clue. Thus, Gohan quickly ran in the direction of the sound. The sound grew louder and louder until it turned into a series of dog barks. Dog barks? Could there be dogs in this ice field? At the source of the sound, Gohan discovered that there was a white, bodiless dog head on the ground. It was this dog head that was barking non-stop. How scary! This dog is still barking when its head is cut off. I Ching exclaimed, then leaned against Gohan's body in fear. Please, if you want to take advantage of Gohan, just say it. You don't have to pretend to be a weak girl. You can be the future heaven-covering Jiandi. However, a dog head without a body could still bark so happily. This feeling was indeed very scary. Who told you that this dog head doesn't have a body? Guhan knocked on I Ching's head. Look carefully. Its body is just frozen in the ice. It turned out that the dog was standing upright. His body from the neck down was completely sealed by the ice field. Only his head was exposed. It looked like the head of a dog that had lost its body. It was very frightening. This dog might be a useful clue. With this thought in mind, Gohan decisively pulled out the King Ugojin's sword and slashed at the ice layer that trapped the dog. The entire dog, along with a small piece of ice that trapped him, were separated from the ice layer by Gohan. He slashed at the remaining piece of ice, and it directly shattered. The unlucky dog was finally freed from the ice layer. You can still bark so loudly after being frozen. You must not be an ordinary dog. Gohan was not a dog lover who was kind enough to save animals. He just wanted to find clues to the secret of the divine kingdom from this dog. Woof woof woof. It was unknown if the dog did not understand Gohan's words, but it barked. It had to be said that this dog looked quite unique. It had a snow-white dog face, but there were dark circles around its eyes. Then, the front of its ears turned black, but the inside of its ears was white. When its facial features were put together, it always gave people a funny and silly feeling. This looks like a husky. I Ching actually recognized the dog's species. I saw a picture of a dog called Husky in a magazine left behind from before the apocalypse. It looks exactly the same as this one. Gohan had also heard of the husky. It was said that it was the most expensive dog in the base city, with a price of 10 million and no bargaining. There was only one characteristic about it, and that was that it was stupid. Humans like to adopt these very stupid animals, because this way, they could show that they were very smart. Ha 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 ha. Hearing I Ching say the husky's name, the dog immediately reacted. It stuck out its tongue and opened and closed its mouth, panting desperately. It seemed that the name had excited it. Assam, do you know the origin of this dog? Why is there still a husky alive in the divine kingdom after 200 years? Gohan asked. My lord, Anubis was born a dog, so his servants are all dogs. We slaves are not real creatures, but creatures made of souls. As long as there is divine power, we can continue to live. This is the same for dogs, Assam explained. In that case, this husky is intelligent. This was the question that Gohan was most concerned about. This. Assam hesitated. It was not that it did not know whether it should answer, but that it did not know how to answer. It would be wrong to say that it does not have intelligence, but to say that it does seem to be an insult to intelligence. But to say that it has intelligence seems to be an insult to intelligence, so I don't know if it has intelligence. The meaning behind Assam's words was very simple. This dog was too stupid, to the extent that it was an insult to the existence of intelligence. Fine, let's give it a try. Guhan placed the husky on the ice field and pointed his sword at the husky's neck. If you understand me, take me to Anubis' palace immediately. If you don't understand me, then I don't mind eating dog meat hot pot in this cold ice field. Woof woof woof. The husky turned its head and stuck out its tongue. Its adorable eyes flashed as it looked at Gohan, as if asking what Gohan meant. I will give you 3 seconds. After 3 seconds I will kill you. Gohan's eyes flashed fiercely as he began to count down. 1, 2, however, before Gohan could say 3, the husky was like an arrow released from the bow, its 4 paws frantically running in a certain direction. Let's chase it. So, Gohan and I Ching chased after the husky. After running with it for more than 20 minutes, they suddenly came to a stop. The place where the husky stopped was also a vast ice field that stretched as far as the eye could see. There was no difference at all. It did not seem like there was any secret hidden here. However, the husky's actions attracted Gohan's attention. The husky desperately used its paws to hit the ice beneath it, as if telling Gohan that there was something beneath the ice. "If you lie to me, I will stew you. Get out of my way." Gohan threatened the husky and chased it away. Next, the king of Yu, Gojian, fired out a dozen or so sword beams, shattering the ice on the ground. Gradually, under the layer of ice, a golden building gradually emerged. The husky was not lying. Anubis Palace was indeed hidden beneath the ice. Gohan used the sword beams to break the ice around the building's door, clearing a path to the door. There was nothing wrong with the door. Gohan pushed it gently and the door opened. The interior of the palace was very gorgeous. It was resplendent, as if it was made of gold. The various furnishings and decorations within the palace were all in perfect condition. It was as though nothing had changed since Anubis was here. The palace was very large. There were more than a dozen halls and hundreds of rooms. Gohan spent a lot of time searching through these halls, but he still found nothing. He could not find any valuable clues. In the end, the husky made a great contribution. It kept howling at a stone pillar in the middle of the palace, successfully attracting Gohan's attention. In the end, Gohan was shocked to find that the stone pillar was hollow. Using the king of Yu's Gojian to break the stone pillar, Chern Xiaolian found that there was indeed something hidden inside. Inside the stone pillar was a long golden box inlaid with various gems. The decorations on the box were very gorgeous. It was clear to anyone who found it that there was a treasure hidden inside the box. Strangely enough, this precious box did not even have a lock. Gohan was able to open this precious box. When the box was opened, Gohan found a familiar golden sword covered in Sanskrit characters. System prompt: You have discovered Sword Maiden, Prajna Sword. This sword is a quest item and cannot be used by non-NPCs. Inside the box was an ancient sword-grade Sword Maiden Prajna Sword. This was the Prajna sword that Song Yifei had successfully coordinated with Tian for 700 years. Who would have thought that Gohan would find it here? Damn, how unlucky. I can't believe I ran into this guy while playing a dungeon. Tian complained through the sword mark. It seemed that Tian held a deep grudge against the Prajna sword. There must have been some touching story between them. I remember that the Prajna sword was the Sword Maiden who fought against Zhetian Jiendi on Sanqing Mountain. In the end, she was defeated by Zhetian Jiendi. Gohan began to connect the clues in his mind about the Prajna sword. From the looks of it, the Prajna sword and Zhetian Jiendi were born at the same time. If Zhetian Jiendi really did come to this temple, then the Prajna sword was most likely brought out by Zhetian Jiendi himself. Or, other than Zhetian Jiendi, there was another person who entered this temple and found the Prajna sword, becoming Zhetian Jiendi's destined opponent. The story was getting more and more interesting. Chapter 320. Apart from discovering the Prajna sword, Gohan could not find any other secrets. Even when he threatened the husky, it would only stick out its tongue pitifully and act cute. Because of this, Gohan had no choice but to leave Anubis' divine kingdom and go to the divine kingdoms of the other two gods to see what was going on. Fortunately, although entering Anubis' divine kingdom was more troublesome, coming out was very simple. This was because there was a teleportation circle inside the broken pillar. As long as Gohan stepped onto the teleportation circle, he would directly return to the hall with the three statues. Gohan's second target was the statue of Isis. According to the ranking of the Egyptian gods, as Mother Earth and the symbol of royal power, Isis's status was naturally above Bastet's. Her divine kingdom was the second place where he could find the secret. Just like Anubis, there was also a string of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs on the back of the statue of Isis. After Assam deciphered it, he found out that in order to open the door to the divine kingdom of Isis, he had to let a person with a fake body without a soul touch the knot of Isis in Isis's hands. This problem stumped Gohan at first, because the description of a person without a soul and a fake body was very vague. In Gohan's group, such a person did not exist at all. After all, only I Ching and Gohan could be considered humans. As for the Sword Maiden, although the academic world had always debated whether the Sword Maiden was a human, the knot of Isis gave its own answer. Gohan let Sky Reliance and King Yu try it out, but the results were naturally fruitless. This meant that at least in the eyes of Isis, the Sword Maiden was not a human. In the end, the one who thought of a solution to this problem was not Gohan or I Ching, but the quiet King Yu who had been silently observing everything. After the fruitless experiment, she came up with an idea. Were the 100 Yu sword slaves she summoned considered people without a soul and a fake body? That's right, that's it. Gohan facepalmed. The 100 Yu sword slaves were summoned using the sword lady's skill. Naturally, they had no souls and their bodies were illusory. Moreover, the 100 Yu sword slaves were indeed humans. As such, the king of Yu summoned a 100 Yu sword slave and told it to touch the knot of Isis. The knot of Isis instantly fell from the statue's hand and smashed into the ground. Just like Anubis, it created a circular opening in the ground, and the gate of the Isis divine kingdom opened. The gods of Egypt seemed to like monotonous landscape. For example, the divine kingdom of Anubis was an endless expanse of ice, while the divine kingdom of Isis was a lush grassland. The entire divine kingdom of Isis was like a football field. Apart from the endless grassland, there were no other plants. What was more amazing was that all the grass on the grassland stopped growing when it reached the height of a person's ankle. Playing football here would definitely be a pleasant experience. Compared to the temple of Anubis that could not be found for a long time, and it was best to find it with the help of a husky, the temple of Isis was very easy to find. It was not far from where Gohan descended, and could be seen clearly with the naked eye. The temple of Isis was built entirely out of stone. The huge stones were cut neatly, and there were no nails or adhesives used to connect the items. They were simply stacked together to form a huge and magnificent palace. The stone temple did not have a gate and one could walk straight in. Compared to the luxurious interior of the temple of Anubis, the temple of Isis was clean and tidy. Everything inside was carved out of stone, simple and without any fancy gadget. Compared to the huge number of rooms in the temple of Anubis, there were only 2 rooms in the entire temple of Isis. One was a huge hall that covered an area of hundreds of square kilometers, and the other was a small room about the size of a bedroom. Isis seemed to be a very open-minded god. Even the dog-headed Anubis knew to hide precious treasures in the stone pillars to prevent them from being stolen by villains. But Isis, on the other hand, had a box exactly the same as the golden box in the hands of Anubis. It was placed in the middle of the small room without any precaution. Gohan opened the golden box, and inside it was also a sword maiden. Unlike ordinary sword maidens, which were about a meter long, this one was only about 20 centimeters long. It was more like a dagger than a sword. This is the fishbowl sword. Gohan took a deep breath when he saw the sword. The fishbowl sword was actually here. According to ancient legends, Jiandi single-handedly created the heavens and stole 18 sword maidens from the heavens. The fishbowl sword was one of them. In truth, this was not a legend. It was written in black and white in the history books. It was acknowledged by all historians. It was a textbook that every primary school student had to learn in grade 3. It was as if without the Communist Party, there would be no new China. It was an unquestionable truth. But now, the fishbowl sword had emerged from the divine kingdom of Isis. If the story of this dungeon was true, didn't that mean the fishbowl sword was already in Jiandi's possession when Jiandi had just become an ancient sword wielder? Jiandi did not steal it from the heavens. Did Jiandi deceive everyone? Well, it could not be said that Jiandi had deceived everyone. Jiandi had never written anything like the Jian diary. People's records of Jiandi were obtained through various indirect channels. It was inevitable that there were some speculations. Like the Prajna sword, the fishbowl sword was also a quest item. Only NPCs could use it. So, Gohan gave it to I Ching and asked her to keep it. After that, Gohan did not give up. He searched the entire temple, but it was the same as Anubis temple. Apart from the fishbowl sword, there was nothing else. However, Gohan found a big bear lying on the ground near the teleportation point. It was drooling and sleeping happily. Originally, Gohan did not plan to wake the bear up and leave the temple. However, the husky behind Gohan started barking non-stop, waking the bear up. The bear opened its eyes and saw Gohan and the others. It was clearly stunned. When it saw the husky and Assam, it was even more shocked. It stood there stupidly, not daring to move. Seeing that the bear had no intention of attacking, Gohan did not plan to kill it. Instead, he stepped into the teleportation point and returned to the Hall of the Three Statues. Seeing that Gohan had left, the bear did not hesitate. It followed Gohan's footsteps and stepped into the teleportation point. They left together. I hope that the final Batet God's kingdom will be fruitful, Gohan muttered to himself as he looked at the black cat statue. Sir Military Governor, don't you think it's a little strange? Just as Gohan was sighing, I Ching suddenly bit Gohan's ear and whispered, Sir, don't you think that our biggest gain from going to these two gods' kingdoms is not the two sword maidens, but the three things with ulterior motives behind us? The three things with ulterior motives that I Ching was referring to were naturally Assam, the husky, and the big bear. To be honest, these three animals were indeed full of suspicious points. Other than Assam, who had a reasonable explanation for himself, the husky and the bear did not make sense at all. There was actually one or more animals left in each god's kingdom. It would be strange if there was nothing strange about it. Actually, if one thought about it carefully, Assam was also an animal. It was just that he had the body of a human. Yes, it is indeed strange. Gohan nodded, then turned around and looked at the three animals behind him with a smile. The three of you, stop pretending. We're all smart people. There's no point in continuing to act like this. How about we talk openly and honestly? Woof, woof, woof. The husky used a cute bark to express his innocence. Awoo, awoo, awoo. The bear seemed to want to say something, but unfortunately, he could not speak. Sir, what do you mean? I do not understand, meow. The only one who could speak, Assam, had an innocent look on his face, as if he did not know anything. What a boring Assam. Lying to me won't do you any good. The lives of the three of you are currently in my hands. As long as I am willing, I can send you on your way at any time, Gohan fiercely threatened Assam. Sir, you must be joking, meow. I have not translated the ancient Egyptian words on Lord Bastet's back for you, meow. I still have some use, meow. Assam's words sounded like he was afraid and begging for mercy, but in fact, he was threatening Gohan. Without him, Gohan would not be able to obtain the secret of the ancient Egyptian words on his back, and he would not be able to find a way to open Bastet's kingdom. Welcome to the Pyramid of Tutankhamun Scenic Area. Urine in the pond, feces in the pit, civilization in the pit. Thank you for your cooperation. Suddenly, Gohan said such a strange thing. I Ching was confused, but Assam looked as if he had been hit hard. He took a few steps back and fell to the ground. How did you know this sentence? You know ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. Assam knew that everything was over. What he had just done was so laughable and pathetic. No, how could I know ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics? I don't even know the hieroglyphics of our Huaxia. How could I be interested in learning something that has already been lost? Gohan shook his head and smiled calmly. But I have a good memory. I happened to see such hieroglyphics in a book, so I recorded it down. Now, it seems that the effect is not bad. Chapter 321. You were the one who wrote those ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, meow. Although it was a cat's face, we could still see the despair written all over Assam's face. He had never imagined that he would be fooled by Gohan. Yes, I wrote them. This is the first time I've written ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs in real life. My handwriting is crooked and ugly. If there's a chance in the future, I'll practice a little more, Guhan said faintly. No, it's fortunate that your handwriting is crooked and I can't understand what you've written. Otherwise, I wouldn't have translated it for you, Meow. Assam's face was full of despair. It was the kind of despair one would feel when one's intelligence was being toyed with. Your Excellency, Military Governor, you're saying that the hieroglyphs on the back of the statues were written by you? I Ching had been listening for a long time. Even with the intelligence of the future emperor shrouding the heavens, it took her a lot of effort to understand the conversation between the two of them. Only then did she have the confidence to ask Guhan for confirmation. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to stand asking so many questions without understanding anything. I wrote them. I first checked the 3 statues, then used the tip of the sword Maiden's sword to write these ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs on the back of the statues. I'm sorry that I tricked you into it, Guhan answered thoroughly. If you want to deceive your enemies, you have to deceive your own people. I understand this principle, Your Excellency, Military Governor. I Ching didn't mind at all. She just felt that there was a huge gap between her and Guhan's intelligence. Your Excellency, Military Governor, how can you be so sure that Assam will translate the hieroglyphs that you randomly wrote? How can you be so sure that Assam will translate these messy things into a way to open the gate to God's kingdom? I Ching asked. Actually, she had already figured out the reason behind it. She just wanted to confirm it with Guhan. Yes, because I know that Assam really wants us to enter Anubis' divine kingdom. Even if I don't do anything, he will take the initiative to find a way to enter Anubis' divine kingdom. However, this guy's brain is too stupid. I waited for him for 10 minutes, but he still couldn't come up with an excuse to enter God's kingdom. I had no choice but to create an excuse for him. Am I right, Great God, Universe Grade Yuan Ko, Lord Badet? Guhan looked at the dumbfounded Assam. He didn't expect this lowly cat slave to be the universe-level Yuan Ko, one of the 3 gods worshipped in this hall, the cat goddess Badet. Yes, you're right, Meow. Bast was completely convinced. He was completely convinced by Guhan. Therefore, Bast did not hide anything and confessed everything. That's right, I really hope that you can enter the kingdom of God and rescue the husky and the big black bear, Meow. However, I couldn't think of a way to open the gate to God's kingdom without exposing my identity, Meow. Then, when I saw the ancient Egyptian words that you wrote, I felt that it was a good opportunity. Even though I couldn't recognize any of the ancient Egyptian words, I still forcibly translated them into a way to enter God's kingdom, Meow. Then, this husky should be Anubis, and this bear should be Isis, right? I Ching asked. At this point, if she still couldn't guess the identity of the husky and the bear, she would have lived her life in vain. Woof, woof, woof. A-woo, a-woo, a-woo. The 2 deities let out a series of cries. No one knew if they were admitting that they were deities. Yes, they are Anubis and Isis. They are trapped in their god's kingdom and can't come out. I have to think of a way to rescue them, Meow. But my divinity has been shattered by that sword-bearer. My divine body has also been suppressed, and only a trace of my soul has escaped. I no longer have the divine power to open the gate to their god's kingdom, Meow, Bast said in an incomparably desolate tone. What happened back then? Guhan frowned and asked curiously, How did you become like this? Sigh. It's all because we didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. We planned to turn the entire southern part of Huaxia into a desert, Meow. Bast sighed and recounted the story from 200 years ago. Originally, our Egyptian pantheon crossed the dimensional rift as a group. However, we encountered trouble during the transmigration. After coming to this world, only the husky, the smelly bear, and I were left together. The other companions couldn't find any traces of them, Meow. Therefore, we decided to take things as they came and planned to stay here for a long time, meow. However, the weather here was too humid and rainy. The three of us couldn't adapt to the climate here. Even the husky and the big bear got the flu more than a dozen times. We decided to use our divine power to completely change the environment here and change it into a desert suitable for us Egyptian pantheons to live in, meow. At first, the magic went very smoothly. The range of the desert continued to expand. Gradually, when we were about to achieve our dream, the edge of the desert touched the vicinity of Demon City, meow. At that time, we didn't know that Demon City had become the nest of the Four Seas dragon race. However, even if we knew, we wouldn't have cared because we didn't know how terrifying the Four Seas dragon race was. We thought that with the power of us three deities, we could already sweep everything in this world, meow. Later, the Four Seas dragon race fought a few times with us because of the desert. Although the result was a draw, we completely offended the Four Seas dragon race. So, the Four Seas dragon race used some unknown method to invite a swordsman to deal with us, meow. Batet said angrily. Swordsman? What is that? Gohan was stunned when he heard the name. The name was too, swordsman is what you call a swordsman, but we called you swordsman at first. Actually, I think the name swordsman sounds much better than swordsman, meow. Bastet's words made Etion, who was in the purple mansion, laugh out loud. Even King Yu couldn't help but laugh out loud. Indeed, the name swordsman was much more appropriate than swordsman. Gohan also understood. Perhaps in the beginning, Yuan Ko did indeed call the swordsman swordsman. Perhaps even the swordsman himself called himself swordsman. However, this name was too easy for people to think of another word. So later on, the swordsman thought of the swordsman for himself. However, in the future, even Yuan Ko generally called the swordsman. The name swordsman gradually disappeared from Yuan Ko's mouth. He really didn't know how his ancestors managed to do this. How did they convince Yuan Ko not to use the extremely annoying name swordsman? If Gohan was Yuan Ko, then Gohan would definitely call his enemy swordsman no matter what. How cool would that be? Oh, enough with the idle talk. Let's continue listening to Bastet's story. Batet continued. In the beginning, we didn't pay much attention to that swordsman because we felt that his strength was only on par with ours. There were three of us, but he was only one person. The three of us thought that we could definitely eliminate this swordsman. But we were wrong, very wrong, meow. That swordsman's swordsmanship was too profound, too exquisite. From start to finish, he didn't release his swordswoman. He only held a dark green longsword in his hand and defeated the three of us. Even our divinities were shattered by him, meow. When Batet recalled this, his tone was very sorrowful. He didn't talk about the specific details of the battle. It seemed like he didn't want to recall these painful memories. However, through Bastet's description, Gohan had a rough idea of which swordsman had shattered the divinities of the three gods. 200 years ago in this instant's dungeon, which was not long after the apocalypse. At that time, there were not many human sword immortal level swordsmen. There were the 10 sovereigns, 8 kings, and 5 heavenly sons. There were also some sword immortal level swordsmen who didn't care to give themselves amazing names. There were about 25 of them in total. Among these 25 sword immortal level swordsmen, there were not many sword immortal level swordswomen who were completely green. Only one sword immortal level swordswoman was green. This swordsman was none other than the ancestor of Liuyan Ling, whom Gohan had killed in the instant's dungeon. He was the first human swordsman, Kanzu Fleeting Time Calendar. Fleeting Time Calendar's sword immortal level swordswoman was the Moon Laurel Sword, also known as the Chang-Yi Sword. In addition, Fleeting Time Calendar and the Four Seas Dragon Tribe were very close. Gohan could basically confirm that it was Kanzu Fleeting Time Calendar who had helped the Four Seas Dragon Tribe kill the 3 Egyptian Yuan Kos. Perhaps Kinzu's friendship with the Four Seas Dragon tribe had started from killing these three unlucky fellows. Most importantly, among the Sword Immortal level swordsmen at that time, only Kinzu Fleeting Time Calendar was the Sword Master. The conditions for becoming an Sword Immortal level swordsman were half based on character and half on luck. This was especially true for the first batch of Sword Immortal level swordsmen. At that time, the world was full of sword essence, and all kinds of dimensional rifts would appear tens of thousands of times a day. The difficulty for Sword Immortal level swordsmen to advance was also the lowest. At the most, there had been 32 Sword Immortal level swordsmen at the same time. This was a number that humans would have to look up to 1,000 years later. No Sword Immortal level swordsman could reach that number. At that time, the role of luck was far greater than the role of character. As a result, almost all the Sword Immortal level swordsmen could only command Sword Immortals to fight from behind. Asking them to fight with their swords was simply asking them to die. Therefore, at that time, the only Sword Immortal level swordsman who could defeat 3 Universe Yuan Ko's swordsmen at the same time was Kinzu Fleeting Time Calendar. Chapter 322. Although Gohan was 90% sure that the immortal sword bearer who killed the 3 gods was Kinzu Fleeting Time Calendar, the remaining 10% could be directly asked by the person involved. Wasn't Queen Yu by Gohan's side? He could directly ask her. She was the sword mistress of Kinzu Fleeting Time Calendar back then, so she must know whether the sword bearer was Kinzu or not. However, when Gohan asked Queen Yu this question, her reaction shocked Gohan. What did you say? Who is Fleeting Time Calendar? Am I familiar with him? Queen Yu asked Gohan in a very confused voice, as if she didn't know who Kinzu Fleeting Time Calendar was. At first, Gohan thought that Queen Yu was deliberately teasing her, but when Gohan confirmed it with a very serious tone, Queen Yu was still at a loss. She tried very hard to remember the name Fleeting Time Calendar, but she couldn't remember who this person was. Could it be that when the real Queen Yu split her consciousness, she deleted all her and Kinzu memories? That couldn't be right. Gohan clearly remembered that after she synchronized with Queen Yu mentioned Fleeting Time Calendar's name several times and used Fleeting Time Calendar to belittle Gohan. In the beginning, Queen Yu even wanted to kill Gohan to avenge Fleeting Time Calendar. In short, Queen Yu definitely remembered Fleeting Time Calendar from the very beginning, and her memory was very deep. But now, King Yu had completely forgotten who Fleeting Calendar was. Gohan asked King Yu if he remembered the memories of the other sword bearers who had synchronized with her, but King Yu still didn't know anything, as if he had lost his memory. This was all a common trick in Korean dramas. Gohan vaguely remembered that from the first episode of King Arthur's betrayal, Queen Yu gradually became another Queen Yu. Her hatred for him was getting lesser and lesser, and her love for him was getting greater and greater. Gohan originally thought that time had diluted everything, but now it seemed like there was a problem with King Yu's memory. Gohan put these things aside for now, because now was not the time to study King Yu's changes. Bast's narration gradually reached the most crucial point, and Bast continued to speak. When our quintessence was broken, the husky, the big bear, and I fell into despair. Without our quintessence, we couldn't use our divine powers. All we had left was brute force, meow. It was impossible for us to be a match for that swordsman. Just as we were waiting for death in despair, someone appeared and saved our lives, meow. Wait, you said that someone appeared and saved you. But it was a person who saved you, not Yuan Ko? Gohan keenly sensed the most important information in Bast's words. It was actually a human who stopped Kinzu, not Yuan Ko. Yes, she's a human. Her aura is exactly the same as a human's. She's a brave knight wearing azure armor. She wields a blue divine sword and fought with the swordsman for 4 whole hours. Neither of them could do anything to the other, so the two of them stopped and started to negotiate. We didn't know what they were talking about. We could only passively accept the result of the negotiation between the two humans. Meow. Bast's face showed a deep melancholy. She probably felt sad for her own powerlessness. In the end, the two humans came to an agreement. That swordsman decided to let us live, but he pulled our souls out of our bodies and turned us into this. Meow. Then, he sealed our bodies in my divine kingdom. Meow. I think Lord Kanzu was afraid that you would continue to harm humans, so he did this. Gohan nodded. Then what about the person who saved you? She saved your lives, so she must have some request of you, right? My lord is wise. I didn't expect you to guess this. Meow. Bast was convinced. That's right. The knight who saved us told us that after 200 years, a man and a woman would come to save us. They would put our souls back into our bodies and give us a new life. The price we have to pay is to serve this man and woman loyally for 1,000 years. Even if we have to give up our lives, it's worth it. Meow. What a familiar routine. Isn't this the setting of the expedition team in Journey to the West? After listening to Bast's words, Gohan suddenly recalled the classic Journey to the West. Unfortunately, the original book of Journey to the West had been completely destroyed. However, a whole TV series was left behind, allowing people to see the magical story of that year. It seems that the man and woman who asked you to serve are the two of us, right? Gohan looked at the three animals, and then they nodded in unison. He then looked at I Ching, but she shyly lowered her head. Could it be that my fate with Lord Military Governor was already predestined 200 years ago? Thinking of this, I Ching could not help but feel her whole body heat up. She did not look like the mighty Jiandi decades later. Bast's story ended here, but Gohan's heart was still full of questions. Did he think that Bast was lying, or was he full of doubts about this? Heroes start from humble beginnings. Dungeon. The non-hidden content of this dungeon was still normal, but after entering the hidden main storyline, the whole dungeon began to contradict itself. Whether it was the sudden appearance of Artoria Black, or I Ching who was betrothed to him, or the three ancient Egyptian gods who had become his loyal servants, all these plots seemed to be tailor-made for Gohan. Gohan did not seem like a player who completed this dungeon mission, but like I Ching, he had become an important NPC in this dungeon. This was what puzzled Gohan the most, and it also made Gohan want to unravel the secrets of the whole dungeon, at least part of the secret. Bast, in your God's kingdom, is it the same as these two, with only one sword? Gohan asked Bast. No, Bast's God's kingdom is different from theirs. That knight placed a lot of things in Bast's God's kingdom. You will know once you go in. Meow. Bast said eagerly. It seemed that in that God's kingdom, there was also something that could allow them to reunite with their bodies. Got it. Gohan nodded and asked again. By the way, Bast, why are you the only one who can speak, while Anubis and Iceyes remain in their animal forms and can't even speak? This is because of a small accident. Meow. Bast explained. Because there are a lot of things in my God's kingdom, the knight threw my soul far away from the temple, unlike the husky and the bear who stayed in their own God's kingdom. Meow. When I finally returned to the gate of the temple, the gate of hell had already closed. Having lost my divine power, I could not open the gate at all, so I could only wait at the gate. In fact, the story of the cat slaves that I told you at the gate was not false. At that time, I did send these two cat slaves to look for cat food, and they did return here. Meow. At that time, it was very difficult for me to maintain my soul state, so I simply occupied the body of one of the cat slaves, so I could speak. The husky and the bear were in their soul state, without a body, so they could not speak. Meow. But why didn't you just tell us the truth? Why did you hide it from us in the beginning? If you had told us the truth at the gate, we would not have had to go through so much trouble. It was I Ching who said this. Yes, if Bast had told the truth earlier, I Ching would not have had to feel crushed by Gohan's IQ. The knight told us that there were two humans, a man and a woman. At first, I thought it was two, so I thought you were not the man and woman that the knight mentioned, meow. Bast said, trembling. At first, I did not intend to show up, but the two of you closed the gate forever, so I had to come out and stop you, meow. Bast did not know if everyone understood the meaning of Bast's words. At first, Bast thought that I Ching was a man, and two men came in together, so naturally, they could not be the man and woman that the knight mentioned, so Bast had been lying to Gohan. Well, this was not surprising. Even Gohan had treated I Ching as a man at first. Percent and asterisk. As for I Ching, it was as if she had suffered a heavy blow. This was her own fault, and she could not blame anyone else. My two lords, you see, we have explained everything, meow. Can we enter my god's kingdom and retrieve our bodies, meow? Bast's pair of cute cat eyes stared at Gohan. Beside him, the husky and the big black bear also gave him their coquettish glances. The husky was even wagging its tail. This Anubis had been a husky for 200 years. It might not have learned anything else, but it had thoroughly mastered the art of wagging its tail. I know, Bast. You don't have to pretend to translate for me now. Just tell me clearly how to open your god's kingdom. Yes, my lord. In fact, the gate to Bast's god's kingdom is the easiest to open. Just knock on the neck of Bast's statue 10 times, and the gate will open. Well, this is indeed very simple, much simpler than the gods' kingdoms of Anubis and Isis. Gohan exclaimed. This is probably the reason why the knight placed the secret in Bast's god's kingdom. I Ching said quietly. The knight probably thought that you, Lord Military Governor, would not be able to open the gates to the other two gods' kingdoms. Gohan was speechless. This was something that Gohan had not thought of. But thinking about it carefully, this was indeed possible. It was reasonable and convincing. Chapter 323. Compared to the divine kingdoms of Isis and Anubis, Bastet's divine kingdom could be said to be very normal. There were mountains, rivers, flowers, grass, and an endless desert. This was what a normal divine kingdom should look like. After entering this divine kingdom, the cat, the dog, and the bear looked very excited. They breathed in the air of Bastet's divine kingdom like crazy girls. Batet, what special smell do you smell? Gohan asked. My lord, we smell our bodies, meow. Batet said excitedly. I can feel that our bodies are in my temple. Then take me to your temple. Gohan also could not wait to unravel the secret of this dungeon, and this secret seemed to be hidden in Bastet's temple. The place where Gohan landed was quite a distance from Bastet's temple. On the way to the temple, Batet scratched his ears and wagged his tail. Finally, he could not help but ask Gohan, My lord, when did you find out that I was Bastet's meow? This question had been in Bastet's mind for a long time. At first, he did not dare to ask, but when it was boring to walk, he finally could not help but ask. I thought you would ask me this question sooner. Gohan rolled his eyes at Batet. From the moment you came out, I saw the problem. Stupid humans and what not, these are the usual tricks of you idiot gods. And when we were in the corridor, the way you teased Isis did not sound like a lowly servant at all. Your tone was very familiar, and it did not seem like it was the first time you teased someone like that. Only gods who are equal to Isis can speak like that. Of course, these things that I can judge from your words and expressions are not reliable. The real reason I found out that you were Batet was because of the gates of hell. Gohan paused. I don't know if you've noticed, but among the tens of thousands of faces on the gate to hell, there's a cat face that looks exactly like yours. This meow. Batet was completely speechless. After he possessed the real Assam, he naturally drove Assam's soul out of his body. Then, Assam's soul was sucked into the gates of hell, and became one of the souls that formed the gates of hell. There were tens of thousands of souls in the gate of hell, and each soul had a different face. This human was actually able to recognize Assam's face from the tens of thousands of faces. What kind of terrifying eyesight and brain power was that? When Bast thought of this, he felt that Gohan was becoming more and more abnormal. But what Batet did not know was that it was impossible for Gohan to recognize Assam's face from the tens of thousands of faces. It was Assam's face that ran to Gohan on its own accord and made a very resentful look at its own body that was spouting lies. Only then did Gohan confirm that there was something wrong with this cat slave. When this question and answer session ended, Bastet's temple finally came into view. The architectural style of Bastet's temple was very unique. From afar, it looked like an upside-down cardboard box. It could not be helped, this was the natural attribute of cats. No matter how powerful a cat god was, its resistance to cardboard boxes was negative. If a cat was willing, it could hide in a cardboard box and play for a year. This was no joke. There was only one entrance to this cardboard temple, and it was very low. Gohan had to bend down to barely enter the temple. The big bear was completely stuck at the door and could not enter. It was only when Gohan used the Yu-King sword to cut the door a little wider that the big guy could squeeze in. The smell is getting stronger and stronger. Bast took a deep breath, intoxicated, and then ran towards a certain direction in the cardboard temple. The other two gods followed closely behind. Only Gohan and I Ching were walking leisurely, not paying much attention to it. When Gohan saw Batet and the other two animals again, they were in a corner of the temple. The three gods were pressing against the three coffins on the ground. Yes, they were indeed three coffins. The wood was coated with a layer of black paint, and the word longevity was written on both sides of the coffins. It seemed that the three coffins contained the bodies of Batet and the other two Yuan Ko. It was obvious that the three of them were very eager to open the coffins, but they could only jump around the coffins, not daring to even touch the edge of the coffins. The reason for this was because there was a treasured sword floating above the three coffins. The sword emitted a burst of light that enveloped the three coffins. The big bear had wanted to touch it, but his entire bear paw was half-cooked and emitted a strong smell of roasted bear paw. I Ching, I told you right? There's no need to rush over, and there's no need to worry that the three of them will betray us after getting their bodies back. I don't believe that the mysterious person didn't leave behind a countermeasure to deal with these three idiots. Gohan's words made Bastet's cat face feel awkward. My lord, please don't joke around. How could we betray you? Meow. Gohan ignored Bastet's reply. Right now, all his attention was focused on the sword floating in the sky. Oh my god, wasn't that the sword floating in the sky the Heaven-Reliant sword? Hey, Heavenly Sword, come out for a moment. Gohan pulled out the Heaven-Reliant sword and released her. Look, isn't that you floating in the sky? I think it's me. Heavenly Sword was a little confused. She couldn't understand why she would appear here. How could there be two of her? Heavenly Sword, do you remember where you met Jetian and synchronized with each other? Is it here? Gohan urgently asked Heavenly Sword. This was a very important question, because Heavenly Sword was Jetian Jiandi's sword Maiden. If this dungeon storyline was real, then Jetian must have synchronized with Heavenly Sword here. If it wasn't here, then the dungeon storyline was fake. It was a deliberately arranged storyline. This was extremely important evidence for Gohan to determine the authenticity of the dungeon. No, I didn't meet Jetian here. How could I have met him here for the first time? I have no impression of this place. Heavenly Sword shook her head desperately. Then, the dungeon storyline is fake. Gohan looked a little confused. This wasn't right. According to Gohan's guess, it shouldn't be like this. Then Heavenly Sword, where do you remember meeting Jetian for the first time? Gohan repeated the question. It's. Heavenly Sword was full of confidence and wanted to answer this question, but the words were stuck at the tip of her mouth. What the hell? Where is it? Why can't I remember? Hee, it seems like someone is the same as me, suffering from amnesia. Queen Yu laughed in the Zifu. Because she lost her memories of Kanzu, she felt that her life was incomplete. She didn't expect Heavenly Sword to be the same as her, suffering from the same illness. She suddenly felt that her life was complete again. Bullshit. I just can't remember the first time Jetian and I met. As for the rest of my memories, I remember them clearly, unlike you. You've completely forgotten everything. Heavenly Sword retorted angrily, but this couldn't hide the fact that she had lost this memory. It seems like someone used a big method to erase this memory of yours. Guhan put his arm around Heavenly Sword's shoulder to calm her down. Someone seems to not want you to remember something. It's you. It's you who erased my memory. Jetian suddenly turned his head and looked at I Ching fiercely. Jetian, it must be you. It must be you who erased my memory. I know, those two bitches, Yuan2 and Avicii, have this ability. They personally erased the memory of that silly girl Xian. TSK, another shocking secret. As an Emperor's sword, Yuan2 and Avicii actually have the ability to erase memories, and even erase the memory of the Xian sword. Guhan couldn't help but recall Xian's hatred towards the Lunyan family. Could it be that there are traces of Jetian Jiandi's interference? Facing Heavenly Sword's stern questioning, I Ching couldn't stand it. She kept waving her hand and sincerely said, "Lady, please calm down. I'm not Jetian. I'm I Ching, I'm really not Jetian." "Alright, you're losing your temper, Heavenly Sword. You need to calm down. Come, have a sip of Dukong wine." Guhan took the gourd from Heavenly Sword's head and placed it in Heavenly Sword's hand. Heavenly Sword took a big gulp of wine, and sure enough, she calmed down and no longer got angry at I Ching. Of course, she also didn't show any good expression to I Ching. "My lords, please calm down, meow," Bast said flatteringly. "Shouldn't we be thinking about how to get that sword down? That way, the three of us can do our best to serve my lords. As long as we get our bodies back, I guarantee that my lords will be able to walk sideways in this world. Even walking sideways wouldn't be a problem, meow. Tisk, if you could walk sideways, would you have been beaten to this state?" Heavenly Sword mercilessly mocked Bast, causing the former universe rank Yuan Ko to turn red and the fur on his cat face to stand up. "Don't worry, I also want to get that sword down. I have no fewer questions than you." Guhan smiled. He leaped up and reached the same height as the floating Heavenly Sword. He then stretched out his hand and firmly grasped the Heavenly Sword in his hand. Damn it! In the next second, Guhan flung his hand away and landed on the ground. Guhan's palm was charred black. Just like the impatient bear, it had become a roasted human hand. Chapter 324. Looks like I can't touch this heaven-reliant sword. Guhan looked at his burnt hand and felt a bone-piercing burning sensation. It seemed like Guhan's protagonist's halo wasn't working. This heaven-reliant sword had clearly rejected Guhan. That's great. How great would it be if I could do the same? The Heavenly Sword looked at itself hovering in the sky enviously. It really wished that it was the one who had roasted Guhan's hand into braised pork trotters. Guhan smiled bitterly. He took out a bottle of burn medicine from his dimensional pocket and applied it to his hand. His burnt hand gradually began to scab, and it would soon return to its original appearance. Guhan turned to I Ching and said, "I was wrong. This heaven-reliant sword is not something I can touch. I Ching, this sword is yours. Go and take it." I Ching said. This heaven-reliant sword was clearly waiting for I Ching, its true owner. Guhan already had a heaven-reliant sword, so he naturally couldn't be with the owner of this one. "It's mine." I Ching was stunned. She subconsciously glanced at Guhan's braised pork trotters, then hid her hand behind her back. She instinctively wanted to reject this suggestion. In the end, the word reject was stuck in I Ching's mouth for a long time. In the end, she still said it. Instead, she gritted her teeth and walked over to the heaven-reliant sword. She reached out with her trembling hand, wanting to pluck the sword out of the sky. "Since Sir Military Governor has given me this task, how can I reject it?" Besides, if my hand is burnt like Sir Military Governor's, Sir Military Governor will definitely be very happy. These were I Ching's thoughts. What the hell was this? In short, I Ching had made up his mind to retrieve the heaven-reliant sword even if his hands were burnt to a crisp. However, there was a problem. The heaven-reliant sword was around 6 meters tall. Even with the addition of Bai Tianjian's physique, I Ching was only able to jump 2 meters above the ground. Even with his height, he was still 2 meters away from reaching 6 meters. This was a very awkward situation. I Ching kept jumping like a frog, but he was still unable to touch the heaven-reliant sword. I Ching's face was completely red. He even had the thought of dying. "Let me help you." Just as I Ching was about to die, Guhan extended a helping hand. Guhan came to I Ching's side. He squatted down and hugged I Ching's skinny but smooth calf. Then, he lifted her whole body. Heavens! I am actually being carried by Sir Military Governor. My feet feel so warm. If only Sir Military Governor was hugging my waist. Damn it, what the hell am I thinking? I Ching's mind was running wild. On the other side, Guhan was telling I Ching, I will jump later. Then, you will grab the heaven-reliant sword. Do you understand? Of course, I Ching didn't understand. Her mind was running wild. I Ching, did you hear what I said? Guhan increased the volume of his voice. Only then did I Ching wake up from her own world. She repeatedly said that she heard him. After hearing I Ching's reply, Guhan immediately jumped up from the ground. Even though he was carrying I Ching, he still jumped 3 meters above the ground. I Ching didn't even need to stretch her hand. She was able to grab the heaven-reliant sword. Is this what it feels like to be burnt? Why does it feel so different from how it usually feels? Just as I Ching was thinking about this, she no longer had the time to think about it. In just one day, I Ching had turned into stone for the second time. Once again, she entered a synchronized state. As expected, the heaven-reliant sword was prepared for her. Guhan gently placed I Ching's body on the ground. Then, he stood beside I Ching and began to protect her. Interestingly enough, this was the second time Guhan had protected an NPC in a synchronized state. The first time was during the fleeting calendar. In the end, Guhan stabbed him to death with his sword. Without the protection of the heaven-reliant sword, the shields around the 3 coffins disappeared. When they saw the shields disappear, Batet and the other 2 animals did not say anything else. They rushed to the side of their coffins and lifted the lids. Then, they threw their souls into the coffins. They actually managed to find their own coffins without opening the lid. It was probably because of the smell. Logically speaking, if you covered your eyes, would you be able to sniff out the smell of your own clothes? It didn't take long for the souls to return to their bodies. In less than a minute, the coffin that the husky had entered was the first to move. A strong man with a jackal's head and a scepter climbed out of his coffin. It was obvious that his movements were very stiff. That was normal. Even if your body hadn't moved for 200 years, it would still be stiff. This was the real body of the Egyptian god of death, Anubis. The first thing he did when he came out of his coffin was to hit himself on the head with his scepter. Then, he said excitedly, "It feels so good to be able to hit myself on the head." The second thing to appear was the black bear's coffin. Who would have thought that when the heavy black bear climbed into the coffin, it would actually be a petite and charming young girl with a small waist. This young girl's beauty was like the legendary natural seductive bones. Each and every one of her movements carried an enchanting charm. This was the goddess of fertility and resurrection, Isis. She only wore a thin layer of gauze, and there was nothing underneath it. Her crimson cherries on her chest and the black grass between her legs could be vaguely seen. Could you imagine that such a beautiful girl's original form was a clumsy bear? After Isis came out, she excitedly pinched her chest and exclaimed, "My big bun is back!" Then, she lifted her gauze and dipped it into her mystical realm for a while, making a splash. She shouted excitedly again, I can have fun again. The last to appear was our cat goddess Batet. At this time, he had completely turned into a cat. He seemed to be holding Assam's flesh in his mouth and spitting it out like garbage. Then, with a light leap, he jumped in front of Gohan and said fiercely, "Humph, stupid human, how dare you play with the great god Batet again? Batet pronounces your death sentence, meow." Well, this Batet, who had been trembling in front of Gohan before, was now arrogantly announcing the death sentence to Gohan like a master. Cats were indeed creatures that would turn their backs on people. "Batet, are you rebelling?" Gohan looked at the smug cat in front of him with interest. Who could imagine how it looked like before when it was kneeling and licking him? How can this be considered rebelling? When did this god say I would be your subordinate, meow? Batet had an expression of concern for the mentally retarded. This is just a necessary means to get back our bodies. Besides, the one who promised you was this useless cat slave. You can take it as your subordinate, meow. Batet looked at Assam's body with disdain. At this time, the soulless body of the cat slave was thrown on the ground like a rag. It was really too pitiful. Sigh, no matter what, he has provided you with rental services for 200 years. If you are so heartless, you will suffer greatly in the future. Gohan advised Bast as if he was a senior. Meow my, don't talk nonsense with me, meow. That damned knight actually dared to make us your slaves. I meow his ancestors, meow. Don't say that Lord Batet is ungrateful, I'll let you off the hook. If you're willing to become the slaves of our great Egyptian gods, we'll spare your lowly lives. But I'll extract your souls and then lock your bodies in this coffin, so that you can enjoy the treatment we once enjoyed, meow. Sigh, stupid. Gohan shook his head and lost interest in chatting with Batet. He then asked Anubis and Ice Eyes, "What about you two? Do you have the same attitude as Batet?" "I will listen to Ice Eyes." Anubis Dog Face smiled honestly. It seemed that he was used to listening to Ice Eye's words. "I don't have the intention to kill you too, but since Batet is angry and wants to kill you, then we can only help Batet. After all, he is a cute cat," Ice Eyes said lovingly. It was understandable that women had zero resistance to cat. "It seems that we have no choice but to fight. I originally wanted to help I Ching get these 3 slaves, but it seems that this is all for naught." Gohan felt that it was a pity. Such a good slave was killed just like that. It was really a pity. "Arrogant, do you think you can defeat us? Do you think you are as strong as that damned human? What a joke, meow." Batet was very disdainful of Gohan's battle prowess. He could feel that the power in Gohan's body was not even 1,000th of his peak. How could such a human defeat him? "Of course I am not as strong as Lord Kanzu. If your divinity was still intact, I would not be able to defeat you. Unfortunately, your divinity is gone. To me, you are just a few wild beasts with some brute force," Gohan said disdainfully. In the face of exquisite swordsmanship, all brute force was trash. Gohan's words poked at Bastet's sore spot. After losing their divinity, their strength had indeed decreased by more than 100 times. They were several levels below their peak. "Meow. Even if we don't have divinity, we can still kill you," Batet shouted and pounced towards Gohan. System prompt, quest updated. Quest 6 completed. You have found the secret in the deepest part of the lookout. System prompt, quest 7, resist the traitors. Resist Anubis, Ice Eyes and Batet who betrayed you. Protect I Ching, who is in a state of synchronization, from any disturbances and wait for her to complete the synchronization. Chapter 325. I'll meow your A*S. Bast was the first to launch an attack at Gohan. The cat clawed at Gohan's face at a speed close to the speed of sound. Gohan reacted quickly and used the Yu-King sword to block Bast's cat claw. Bast was not a big cat, but its strength was not small. As expected of the universe-level Yuan Ko, Its attack was like a road roller that weighed tens of tons hitting Gohan's Yu-King sword. If Gohan were to take it head-on, his wrist would probably be broken in an instant. Thus, Gohan skillfully shifted Bast's strength to the left. Bast flew out like a cannonball and fell heavily to the ground. However, Gohan could not relax because Anubis and Isai's attacks had arrived. Anubis's attack method was his scepter. Although the scepter was not big, it was extraordinarily heavy. If it was not tens of tons, it was at least tens of tons. Gohan only touched it lightly and the web between his thumb and forefinger became numb. His bones could not take it anymore. On the other hand, Isai's was good at using darts. The knot of Isai's in her hand could condense the air into air darts, invisible and formless. When Isai's first attacked, Gohan did not notice it until the darts were less than a meter away from his body. Only then did he feel the change in the airflow. Although Gohan tried his best to dodge, the dart still injured his left arm. It was just a gentle graze, but Gohan's arm was cut a few centimeters deep. This is not a suitable place to fight, Gohan silently thought. Gohan's current fight was rather stifling. This was because behind Gohan was the petrified I Ching. Gohan did not dare to go all out. He was deeply afraid that his attacks would injure I Ching and interrupt her synchronization. If that happened, he would completely fail the instant's dungeon quest. I have to think of a way to pull the battle far away. Gohan made up his mind. At that moment, the black cat Bast, who had been thrown away, attacked angrily. It wanted to use its sharp claws to cut Gohan's throat, but Gohan gently moved sideways. His left hand grabbed Bast's tail and lifted it. Batet, I think the real reason for your rebellion is because your IQ has been crushed by me too much? Gohan raised Bast in front of his eyes and said mockingly, Your intelligence is the stupidest cat I've ever seen. Even Garfield is smarter than you. Logically speaking, Bast's intelligence was much higher than most humans. Compared to 99% of cats, it was much smarter. However, Gohan was not lying. Bast was indeed the stupidest cat he had ever seen. This was because Gohan had only seen this cat in his entire life. In Yuzhong City, cats were rare pets, much rarer than dogs. If an ordinary family was willing to spend a sum of money, they could still get a dog as a pet. But if you wanted to raise a cat, please, did you have the approval from the council? Without the approval, did you still want to raise a cat? In short, cats were very rare in Yuzhong City. They could not be seen in ordinary residential areas. There might be a few in the core area, but Gohan had not had the opportunity to see one. So, Bast was indeed the first cat that Gohan had seen with his own eyes. Unfortunately, Bast did not know this. It was about to explode when it heard Gohan's words. Stupid human, Batet is going to kill you. You actually dare to compare that Garfield fellow to this meow meow. I'm going to die of anger. Well, Bast was really angry. The most annoying thing in its life was to hear someone compare it to Garfield. Garfield was a reverse scale in Bast's heart that could not be touched. Speaking of Garfield's story, he was very famous in the human world. In essence, Garfield was like Batet, both of them were marshals. Moreover, Garfield's qualifications were very high. On the first day of the apocalypse, Garfield came to the human world. This was the only Yuan Ko that existed from the first day of the apocalypse to the present day. Speaking of Garfield's level, in the beginning, humans gave Garfield the level of a mouse. Yuan Ko. A cat with the name of a mouse was really a tragic thing. The reason why Garfield was determined to be a mouse Yuan Ko was very simple. It was because Garfield was the first Yuan Ko to surrender to a human and the first Yuan Ko to be captured by an ordinary human. Yes, this Garfield carried the name of Yuan Ko for nothing, but he was tragically captured by an ordinary human. Don't think too much about it. That was an ordinary person living in the old Yanjing city. His life ended as an ordinary person. At first, the ordinary person thought that Garfield was just an ordinary fat cat that had been sleeping on the ground. This person, who had been starving for a few days, thought of slaughtering Garfield and stewing it. Therefore, it was very simple for him to capture Garfield with just 2 hands. Garfield did not even resist. When this person boiled water and was about to skin Garfield, the sleepy Uncle Cat suddenly said, "Hey, cat slave, are you going to boil water for this Uncle Cat to bathe?" This ordinary person was scared half to death and hurriedly handed Garfield over to the police, who maintained the stronghold. Then, Garfield became a Yuan Ko sample and lived in the human laboratory for more than 400 days. During these 400 days, Garfield was very cooperative with the human research. He never resisted and never escaped from prison. Nonsense. With pizza serving him every day, how could this Uncle Cat bear to escape? If it weren't for the fact that the old Yenjing city had not been breached by Yuan Ko 400 days later, and the humans had begun to flee to the dimensional rift under the leadership of Kanzu, leaving this obedient Garfield in the old Yenjing city, this Uncle Cat would probably have lived in the human laboratory for the rest of his life. However, the results of these 400 days could not be underestimated. Through the research on Garfield, the humans' understanding of Yuan Ko skyrocketed. They also gradually understood Yuan Ko's origins and the fact that they were hiding in the dimensional rift. It could be said that Garfield had revealed the first page of Yuan Ko's secrets to the humans. However, as Garfield's figure became active in various battlefields, the humans' evaluation of Garfield's level rose from mouse-level Yuan Ko to universe-level Yuan Ko. That's right, it was universe-level Yuan Ko. It was equivalent to a sword wielder at the immortal sword tier. It was the same universe-level Yuan Ko as Baudet. The reason why there was such a huge increase in level was that the humans discovered that Garfield was a monster that could not be killed. Whether it was crushing with a heavy object, striking with a strong electric current, cutting open the chest and abdomen, rapid freezing, poison invasion. In short, there were thousands of methods that could kill a normal Yuan Ho 10,000 times, but they were completely ineffective against Garfield. Even if he was flattened into a pancake in 1 second, he could return to his normal appearance in the next second. That's right, there was another example that was exactly the same as Garfield. It was also a cat, and it seemed to be called Tom. This Tom had a good friend called Jamie. Alright, we've digressed. Let's return to the battlefield. Although he didn't know why Baudet had such a deep grudge against Garfield, this was exactly what Gohan wanted. Gohan threw Baudet far away and then ran away from I Ching. As he ran, he shouted, "Baudet, if Garfield was here, he wouldn't have been crushed by me like this." Alright, Baudet was completely enraged. It chased Gohan far away from the battlefield. Ice Eyes and Anubis didn't suspect anything. They followed behind Baudet and also chased after Gohan. The entire battlefield followed Gohan's wishes, far away from I Ching. Go to hell, meow. Baudet, who had caught up to Gohan, clawed wildly again, trying to scratch Gohan's face. However, without I Ching in the way, Gohan completely let go. He released a sword aura from his blade and knocked Baudet to the ground. He even cut off a tuft of fur from Bastet's butt. Seeing Gohan cut off another tuft of fur from the body that he had painstakingly gotten back, Baudet attacked crazily. However, his attacks became more and more disorderly. Gohan didn't need to dodge seriously at all. He just needed to dodge instinctively. On the contrary, Baudet took more and more attacks. His body was cut more than a dozen times by the Yuwang sword, and more than a dozen tufts of fur were cut off. Oh my God, my cute little baby! Ice Eye's heart ached when she saw this. She began to throw air darts at Gohan as if they were free. At the same time, Anubis struck with his scepter. For a moment, Gohan had to face the attacks of 3 gods at the same time. However, even when facing the attacks of the 3 deities, Gohan was still able to deal with them with ease. Apart from the first time when he was at a disadvantage because he did not understand their combat power, the attacks of the 3 deities never landed on Gohan's body again. This wasn't to say that Gohan's swordsmanship had improved a lot, but because the three of them were really bad at fighting. Even a middle schooler might be stronger than the three of them in a fight. Even though the three of them were the strongest Anubis, they were still terrible at fighting. When Guhan saw Anubis raise his hand, he was able to guess where Anubis was going to attack next. Guhan dodged the attack and casually cut a wound on Anubis' hand. There was no need to mention Ice Eyes and Batet. The accuracy of each of their darts was very low. Even if Guhan stood still, 3 or 4 out of 10 of Ice Eye's darts would not land on Guhan. On the contrary, her darts often stabbed Anubis. If it weren't for Anubis' thick skin, he would have died to Ice Eyes before he died to Guhan. In short, the three gods' close-quarters combat skills were terrible. Logically speaking, as members of the intense Egyptian divine system, their combat skills should not be this terrible. However, they originally relied on divine power to fight. Once their divinity was broken and they lost their divine power, the three gods would not use normal close-quarters combat method. They had powerful brute force, but they couldn't even touch Guhan's body. They could only passively take hit. If it weren't for the fact that their body's defense was very abnormal, which was the defense of a genuine U-realm Yuan Ko, they would have died under Guhan's sword long ago. However, it wasn't that Guhan didn't have the ability to kill them. Don't forget about King Yu's ultimate technique, which could increase the power of one sword by a few hundred times. At this moment there were almost 20 sword slaves on the field. Because the sword slaves' attacks were like tickles to the three gods, they didn't care about these little bugs. This allowed Guhan to quickly gather 20 sword slaves, which was enough for Guhan to use King Yu's ultimate technique. However, Guhan didn't choose to use his ultimate technique. He was waiting for I Ching's synchronization to end. This was because the quest prompt stated that Guhan had to block the three gods' attacks and wait for I Ching's synchronization to end. Obviously, this battle should have ended in I Ching's hands, and not in his Guhan's hands. Since that was the case, why not wait? I Ching's stomach had already swelled to its limit. In a few more seconds, another Heaven Reliance would be born. Chapter 326. No, something's wrong. Batet, we've got the wrong target. After fighting for a long time, Ice Eyes was the first to realize that something was wrong. Batet, we can't waste any more time with this human. F***ck, what's wrong? Let's kill this human first, meow. Batet meowed. Clearly, his hatred for Guhan had reached deep into his bones. Batet, you idiot, have you forgotten that the sword that restricted our bodies has already entered that human girl's body? When that human woman wakes up, we'll be attacked from all sides. Batet, we should kill one of them while that woman is petrified. Ice Eye's words were reasonable. Meow. Meow. Then let's kill one of them first, meow. Batet finally understood and tried to leave the battle with Guhan to kill the petrified I Ching. However, how could Guhan let them get what they wanted? Guhan let out a long roar and 5 sword beams swept towards the 3 deities. The 3 deities dodged in a hurry, but they were still hit. Their bodies were slashed with more than 10 wounds. The unluckiest was Anubis. A sword beam slashed through his eye, causing one of his eyes to turn red and blood to flow all over the ground. None of you can go over. When the raging sword beams ended, Guhan rode alone, actually, he was not riding, to block the path of the 3 deities. With me here, you can forget about it. Charge over. He cares so much about that woman, which means that she's his weakness. Let's charge over and kill that woman, and we'll win, meow. Batet shouted, and the 3 of them started charging towards I Ching like angry bulls. Dream on. Guhan snorted coldly and 10,000 sword beams surged into the Yu King Gojian sword. The large amount of sword beams caused the surface of the Yu King sword to appear a faint blue. 9 swords of mysterious heaven soared in the field. The 9 swords of mysterious heaven had a total of 9 moves. Sword of the abyss, sword of massacre, sword of the heavens, sword of inscription, sword of the spring, sword of destruction, sword formation curtain, sword in the field, and the last move, sword before peace. The 9 swords of mysterious heaven was a Taoist sword technique, because when these 9 moves were linked together, they were the Taoist 9 syllables of true words. Soldiers, fighters, and formations, front. Among them, Gohan had already used sword descending the abyss, sword battling the heavens, sword inscription, sword all springs, sword array destruction, and sword formation curtain. Sword of the abyss was the sword chi that Gohan had just released. Sword dipper vault was Gohan's strongest single-target killer move. Engrave of the Swordsman allowed Gohan to use the sword kinesis technique before reaching the immortal sword tier. Sword of the Spring was Gohan's defensive skill, which could form an umbrella-shaped shield in front of him. Sword Rend was the best choice for a large number of opponents, and it was an AoE skill. Sword Formation Curtain was a set of movement skills. And depending on the amount of sword chi invested, it could trigger different dodging effects. 9 Swords of Mysterious Heaven, sword in the field. This was a move that Gohan had never used before. The Yu-King sword, which was filled with sword chi, was stabbed into the ground by Gohan, leaving only the hilt exposed. The moment the Yu-King Go-Jian sword was stabbed into the ground, the entire ground began to tremble as if there was an earthquake. Countless sharp spikes protruded from the ground, sending Bast and the other 2 gods flying. The ground that did not have spikes began to sink, sinking by more than 10 meters. When the sword in the field ended, the ground within a few hundred square meters sank, turning into a sharp stone forest. Bast and the other 2 were all trapped at the bottom of the stone forest. They had lost their god power, so they did not have the ability to fly. It was impossible for them to fly out of the stone forest that had sunk into the ground. There was only one way to get out, and that was to hug the stone pillars and slowly climb up. Although it would only take them a few minutes to climb up with their physiques, these few minutes were enough for I Ching to complete the final synchronization. A minute later, Bast, who was in cat form, was the first to jump out of the stone forest. It was so angry that it gave up on killing I Ching. Instead, it focused its anger on Gohan. However, before its claws could touch Gohan, it was blocked by a sword that appeared out of nowhere. Meow! Bast cried out in pain. Its claws were covered in blood. Upon closer inspection, its sharp claws had all been cut off. Even a small portion of the flesh at the center of its claws had been cut off. Sorry to trouble you, husband, to protect Ching Air. The sword returned to its owner's hand. I Ching, who was as imposing as an empress, slowly walked to Gohan's side. Who would have thought that after just a synchronization, she would address Gohan as her husband, and the way she referred to herself as Ching Er, which was filled with the smell of a boudoir. You're not the original I Ching? I Ching's character changed too quickly. Previously, she called him Sir Military Governor, and deliberately kept a distance from him. But now she called him husband as if they had lived together for more than 10 years. It seemed to have become a habit, just like how one would call one's mother. Of course I'm I Ching. How can husband doubt Ching Air? Ching Air will be sad. When I Ching said this, she looked sad and tearful. If she had not held back her smile, Gohan would have thought that he had hurt I Ching's heart. Meow, adulterous couple, meow. Bast, who had the flesh at the center of its claws cut off, was probably more than 200% angry. Its body suddenly grew bigger. The small cat's body became dozens of times bigger, and it became a mighty lion. The lion's 4 hooves pressed on the ground, and its whole body rushed towards I Ching like a cannonball. I have some chores to take care of right now. Ching Air will talk to husband after I get rid of this beast. I Ching showed a shy expression to Gohan, and then this expression instantly changed into a cold and stern one. Seeing Batet pouncing over, the heart of the cat trembled, as if something terrible was about to happen. Evil creature, you are getting bolder and bolder. With a flip of the heaven-reliant sword in I Ching's hand, he neutralized Bastet's attack. Then, he grabbed one of Bastet's ears and twisted it forcefully. Bastet's face instantly looked as though someone had knocked over a jar of sauce. An indescribable expression appeared on his face. Meow. I Ching's heaven-reliant sword slashed out again and one of Bastet's ears was cut off. The pain was so intense that Bastet was no longer able to maintain his lion form. He fell to the ground, clutching his head with his little paws as he rolled about and howled in pain. One could only imagine how painful it was to lose an ear. In less than 10 seconds, Bast had completely lost the ability to fight. This kind of battle left Guhan speechless. The reason why Guhan had been entangled with these three deities for so long and had to use the 9 swords of mysterious heaven, sword in the field to buy time, was because Guhan could not completely break through the physical defenses of these three deities. At most, he could leave a small wound on their bodies. He could not directly cut off one of their ears like I Ching did. Bast and the other 2 gods' physical bodies were at the universe level Yuan Ko level. Even if they had lost the protection of their godheads, which reduced their defenses by more than 100 times, they should still be at the level of a nether level or a meteor level Yuan Ko. Guhan was a sword wielder with only about 4,500 sword element. It was normal for him to be unable to break through their defenses. Yet, I Ching had easily sliced off his opponent's ear. This meant that I Ching's attack was strong enough to break through a nether-grade Yuan Shun's defenses. Including the damage from the heaven-reliant sword, I Ching would need at least 50,000 points of sword essence to achieve such a feat. No, it's absolutely impossible for I Ching to have 50,000 sword elements. This is impossible. Guhan put a huge X on this guess. I Ching wasn't even 18 yet, so all her sword elements were innate sword elements. Since ancient times, the number 1 innate sword element had always been Kanzu. His innate sword element was only 15,000 points. How could I Ching surpass Kanzu by 3 times? After Bast lost his ability to fight, Anubis and Ice Eyes finally climbed out of the stone forest. When they saw Bast rolling on the ground and howling in pain, they were stunned. How could the great cat goddess Bast lose an ear in the blink of an eye? The 2 of them were stunned, but I Ching was not. She sneered and the heaven-reliant sword in her hand floated up. It was like a fish swimming in the air. Sword kinesis technique. Guhan's eyes lit up. I Ching had actually used the sword kinesis technique. Only a mortal sword wielder could use this long-range control technique. He hadn't expected I Ching to be able to use it. However, Guhan seemed to have forgotten that he could also use the sword kinesis technique. The engraved swordsman of the mysterious sky 9 swords allowed Guhan to master the sword kinesis technique in advance. When his attention returned to I Ching, the fish-like heaven-reliant sword circled around I Ching and charged at Anubis. When Anubis saw the flying heaven-reliant sword, he didn't think much of it. He raised his scepter, intending to block the attack. However, Anubis regretted his sloppy attitude. The heaven-reliant sword made a miraculous turn, circled around Anubis's scepter, and flew behind him. It stabbed at the dog-headed man's neck. In the next second, Anubis, who had been insufferably arrogant and mighty, fell to the ground like a husky. He stuck out his tongue and lost the ability to fight. Why am I the only one left? When Ice Eyes saw that the situation was not right, she made a prompt decision and immediately ran toward the exit. As a result, the flying heaven-reliant sword chased after Ice Eyes and ruthlessly slashed at her perky buttocks. A large piece of buttocks flew out of her buttock. Ice Eyes cried out in pain and fell to the ground along with her 2 companions. The battle was over. Chapter 327. Aya, it's so embarrassing to let my husband see little Ching's rude side just now. I Ching, who had finished dealing with Bastet and the other 2 animals, returned to Guhan's side with a shy look on her face. Her nimbleness and brutality just now had nothing to do with shyness at all. Now, these three unlucky animals had their limbs nailed by I Ching. They were nailed to the coffin like Jesus was nailed to the cross. Of course, ordinary nails could not even pierce the skin of these three, so it was impossible to nail them to the coffin. These nails were taken out from the coffin by I Ching. There were exactly 12 of them. It seemed that when these three animals were suppressed, they were prepared in advance in the coffin. It seemed that the human who sealed them had long guessed that these three would betray him, so he had left a way to control them in advance. Husband, we haven't seen each other for hundreds of years, but you are still so handsome. My heart is beating fast when I see you. I Ching was still very shy when she spoke, but would a shy person say such words openly? Or did she say it in front of the person she admired? However, I Ching's words just now revealed a very important piece of information. She said that she had not seen Gohan for hundreds of years. What did this mean? Could it be that she had seen the solid cold a few hundred years ago? Was she talking about the time in the instance or the time in reality? If it was the time in the instance, then I Ching was only 17 years old at this time. How could it be that she had not seen Gohan for hundreds of years? If she was talking about the time in reality, please, when Tian Jiendi ascended to heaven, there were still more than 400 years before this game started. I Ching, the current I Ching, is not the original I Ching at all. Who are you now? Gohan asked. Sigh, can't my husband treat Ching Er better? I Ching lowered her head and looked at her own body. Sure enough, Ching Er's figure will never be able to please my husband. Unlike that woman, as long as I'm with that woman, my husband's eyes can't leave her body, I Ching said sadly. Gohan was too lazy to talk about this topic with I Ching, so he directly said, even if you don't say it, I can vaguely guess that you are the future I Ching? You've possessed your past self. As long as one wasn't an idiot, they would be able to see this point. Whether it was the way he spoke, the way he fought, or the way he addressed Gohan as his husband, it wasn't something the current I Ching could do. It must be that a future I Ching had possessed the current I Ching, which was why there was such a huge change. My husband is indeed smart. However, the current Ching Er cannot be said to be the Ching Er of the future. It can only be said to be the Ching Er of the past. I Ching replied sweetly with a smile. You're the I Ching of the past? Gohan was taken aback. Shouldn't the I Ching of the past be younger? How was it possible for her to call him husband and husband? However, Gohan immediately understood the meaning behind I Ching's words. You mean you in real life? You know that the current world is a game. Without a doubt, I Ching's current state should be a certain stage of adulthood, but I Ching said that she came from the past. In that case, it was impossible for such a I Ching to exist in the game's timeline. Only in the real world's timeline could there be such a I Ching, the invincible Jiendi who established the base city of Yuzhang 700 years ago. Jiendi. Since you've already guessed it, I don't have anything to hide from you. That's right, of course I know this is a game world, and I also know the real world. I Ching readily admitted her arrogance. This is going to be troublesome. I Ching's straightforward admission gave Gohan a headache. Heaven-covering Jiendi, who had ascended 700 years ago, had suddenly appeared in front of him and called him husband. Not only was the mystery not solved, but it had also become even bigger. Heaven-covering Jiendi, what is the relationship between us? Can you explain it to me? Gohan asked another question after some thought. What heaven-covering Jiendi? I Ching was stunned by the question. Then she sighed. Heaven-covering Sword Immortal has become heaven-covering Jiendi. You don't know that you have become heaven-covering Jiendi? Gohan was surprised. This was interesting. Since I Ching came from the past, how could she not know that he was heaven-covering Jiendi? Is it strange? Shaoqing, I left my true self before the final battle at Three Purities Mountain. If Three Purities Mountain wins, I will become the Sword Emperor. If I lose, I will die. That's why I split Shaoqing. That way, I will have a chance to see you again, husband. I Ching's tone was very bleak when she said this. I don't know what the outcome of the battle at Three Clear Mountain is. In reality, I believe that I only have a 30% chance of winning. Not 30%, it's 25%. Tian was suddenly released. She stared at I Ching. That day, you told me that you only have a 25% chance of winning against Peace Sword Immortal. I lied to you. Tian, if I didn't lie to you, why would you put in so much effort to fight that battle? I Ching laughed coldly. You and I have never been on the same side. If it wasn't for husband, I would have cut you off with severed black hair long ago. Why would I keep you alive until the final battle? Hearing I Ching say this, it seemed that Tian and I Ching had a huge and seemingly irreconcilable conflict. Originally, history said that Tian had a terrible relationship with all the other sword-bearers except Heaven-covering Jiendi. Now, it seemed that Heaven-covering Jiendi could be excluded as an exception. That's right, I'm an idiot. I was deceived so badly by you at Three Clear Mountain. Tian stopped talking. Only now did she realize that Gohan was still by her side. There were some things that she definitely couldn't let Gohan know. It seems that I won the bet. Since that's the case, I won't say anything. The rest of the path is in your hands, Tian. You should know that from the beginning it was you who owed me. I only let you pay me the interest once at Three Clear Mountain. We're not even yet even. After I Ching finished speaking, she stared at Tian. That's right, we're not even yet even. Tian also stared at I Ching with a similar aura. These two were once my master and the Sword Lady. They should have been the closest of friends. Just what kind of hatred do they have that they still haven't let go of it? Gohan thought silently. In the future, will my Qingpin reach this stage as well? Gohan was really worried about the future between him and Qingpin. He thought of the young girl Qingpin. The mysteries surrounding his Qingpin were probably no less than the mysteries between these two. Moreover, it seemed that some of these mysteries were related to him. It seemed that many things in his future had already been decided. I don't have time to argue with you. Once I wake up, the rest of the time will be counting down. There are a few things that I must tell you as soon as possible, my husband. I Ching sighed and no longer paid attention to the angry Tian. She then looked at Gohan and said, Husband, these things are very important. You must promise Qing Heir that you can't do these things. You must do it so that Qing Heir didn't split her soul before the great battle in vain. I only hope that husband can safely get through some of the calamities. I Ching's words could be said to be very sincere. Moreover, there was a kind of power in her words that Gohan couldn't resist and couldn't help but believe. Tell me first. I'll promise you after you tell me. Gohan said seriously. Alright, the first thing is that before you become an immortal tier sword wielder, you can't go looking for news about Sister Artoria. Even if you happen to find news about Sister Artoria, you can't go looking for her. Husband, please promise Qing Heir this, okay? He didn't think that the first thing I Ching said was related to Artoria. Before becoming an immortal tier sword wielder, he couldn't go looking for Artoria. Putting aside emotional factors and analyzing this sentence rationally, one could reach a very obvious conclusion. Is Artoria in danger now? I mean in reality? Gohan asked anxiously. Gohan didn't know why he cared so much about Artoria. Husband. I Ching hesitated and gritted her teeth. If I Ching lies to you, you will definitely despise Qing Heir. Yes, Sister Artoria is in a very dangerous situation, but Qing Heir guarantees that no one can harm Sister Artoria's life. Before husband becomes an immortal tier sword wielder, Sister Artoria is absolutely safe. Qing Heir guarantees this. Alright, I promise you. As long as you guarantee that Artoria's life won't be in danger before I become an immortal tier sword wielder, then I will definitely not go looking for news about her, nor will I take the initiative to look for and rescue her. Guhan thought for a few seconds and made the promise decisively. Actually, in Guhan's heart, Artoria wasn't important enough for Guhan to risk his life. This was the truth. After experiencing Medusa, Guhan valued his own life even more. He wasn't the kind of man who would give up his life for a woman. But logically speaking, this was what Guhan thought now. Perhaps he would really give up on Artoria out of pity for his own life. But if Artoria was Qing Pin, would Guhan still make such a decision so decisively and rationally? Guhan would probably be the first to rush over and save Qing Pin at all costs. Alright, then Qing Er will talk about the second matter. I Ching paused and said in a low voice, "Husband, Qing Pin is very dangerous. Please hand her over to the Lunyan family. You can't stay with Qing Pin any longer. She will kill you." Chapter 328. That's impossible. Just like how he promised not to save Artoria before he reached the immortal sword tier, Guhan also rejected I Ching's request to give up on Qing Pin. Guhan would never give up on Qing Pin, whom he had spent so much time with, just because of some **T words in the instance dungeon. But husband, you have to believe in Qing Er. When Qing Pin breaks the seal in the future, she will kill you. You've already seen her true form once. Husband, there's no way you can defeat her in that form. You'll really die in her hands, I Ching said sincerely. You even know about this? Guhan was stunned. I Ching actually knew about the battle in the Mei Ling mountain range, and knew about Qing Pin's transformation from a cutesy to a young girl. Not many people knew about this. Only he and Reina Takasaka knew about it. How did I Ching, a soul fragment from a few hundred years ago, know about this? Could there really be the ability to travel through time in this world? Combining the information from the instance dungeon, Guhan could not help but suspect that someone had traveled back in time to the era of Zhetian Jiandi. It was even possible that the person who had traveled back in time was Guhan himself. Otherwise, why would I Ching call Guhan husband? Although I don't know how you know about this, and even if what you said is true, I will never agree to it, Guhan replied coldly. His tone was firm. You will regret it. If you don't agree to it, you will regret it in the future. I Ching said agitatedly. That's in the future, and it's a regret in the future. What happens in the future is in my hands. Qing Pin is my sword mistress, so she will be my sword mistress forever. If she wants to kill me, I'll rip off her pants and spank her butt. I'll naturally teach my own people a lesson. I will never hand her over to some Lunyan family. Guhan said firmly. That's how it is. I won't give you a second answer. I Ching sighed deeply. Actually, I expected this answer from you. Qing Er was just foolishly trying to change it, but it seems like she failed. Never mind, you chose your own path. Qing Er only hopes that you can remember one thing. When poverty reaches that stage, my husband, you must escape. Escape immediately. Don't waste even a second. We'll talk about it on that day, Guhan said disapprovingly. Clearly, Guhan would not escape when that time came. This is fate. In fact, this is quite good. Husband will understand Qing Er's painstaking efforts sooner or later. I Ching smiled bitterly. It's fine if you don't agree to this, but there's one more thing that I hope you can agree to. Qing. You haven't been to Changyang Mountain, have you? I Ching's sudden words shocked Guhan. That was because Artoria Black had also mentioned the Changyang Mountain before. She had also asked Guhan if he had been to the Changyang Mountain. She wanted to know what secrets were on the mountain that made Artoria Black and the sky-shrouding Sword Emperor mention it at the same time. No, I've never heard of Changyang Mountain, Guhan answered honestly. It's good that you haven't. Husband, within the next 5 days after we leave this instance dungeon, please return to Yang Mountain. Husband, you don't have much time left. I Ching suddenly held both of Guhan's hands. What exactly is at Changyang Mountain? Why do I have to go there in 5 days? Gohan looked at I Ching suspiciously. There are many good things there, things that are very important to husband's future. Not only is there a treasure that Ching personally buried for husband, but there is also something very important that is about to be born. Husband, do you know about it? Your good friend, Miss Ling, is already there. Liuyan Ling is at Chongyang Mountain. Gohan was shocked. No wonder Liuyan Ling had suddenly left without saying goodbye. Something was about to be born at Chongyang Mountain. The Liuyan clan was very sensitive to such things. Wait, since the Liuyan clan knows about Chongyang Mountain, why should I go there? Gohan shook his head. How can a mere sword wielder like me snatch something that the Liuyan clan has set their eyes on? Although Liuyan Ling is on good terms with me, she won't ruin the Liuyan clan's interests just because of that. That's not the case, husband. On the contrary, not only will you not offend the Liuyan clan by going to Chongyang Mountain, but you will also gain their friendship. Don't worry, everything is under I Ching's control. Husband, you just have to go there. Gohan made up his mind after some thought. Alright, I promise you. I will make a trip to Chongyang Mountain. It's not that you will go. You must go. You must leave within 5 days. If you're late by even a day, the situation will be completely different. Even I Ching can't guarantee what will happen then. I Ching emphasized that Gohan had to leave within 5 days. Alright, I will definitely leave within 5 days. Gohan nodded in agreement. That's great. Ching believes in husband's promise. I Ching finally let out a sigh of relief. A smile appeared on her face. That's right, husband. You can bring a few more people with you this time. It's best if you can bring the owner of the wisdom sword as well. Tian, you should have taken out the wisdom sword already, right? How did you know I took out the wisdom sword? Tian's face paled. I Ching, you're scheming against me again. This is all part of your scheme, isn't it? No wonder you didn't stop me from burying the wisdom sword back then. So this is what you were planning. You bastard, you stinking man, you stinking whore. I'm not scheming against you. I'm just making the correct prediction based on your personality. Tian, it's been so many years, you should change your temper. Otherwise, even if you become my husband's sword maiden this time, you won't have a good ending. I Ching advised. No matter how he listened to it, his words were so annoying. You're dreaming. This heroine, Tian, was born free and unfettered. That's just my personality. If you want me to change, you might as well kill me, Tian said proudly. Fine, I'm no longer in charge of your affairs. I'll leave the rest to your husband. I Ching smiled sweetly. She pressed her body closer to Gohan and said gently, Husband, Ching doesn't have much time left. I'm going to leave soon. Before I leave, can you let Ching feel husband's scent one more time? Ching hasn't felt it for hundreds of years. Feel my scent? Gohan was shocked. This I Ching she couldn't be thinking of. In the end, before Gohan could figure it out, I Ching stood on her tiptoes, raised her lips, and kissed Gohan's lips heavily. This kiss seemed to have transcended thousands of years. Gohan felt as if he could feel the true presence of that stubborn girl from 700 years ago. Adulterous couple. Tian's face was pale from anger. This adulterous couple actually dared to kiss in front of him. He must. Shameless adulterous couple. This king must personally lead 1,000,000 troops to tear this bitch into 1,000 pieces and dismember her corpse. Who stole my line? Tian was stunned. Only then did she realize that King Yu was cursing her through the sword mark. If it wasn't for the fact that Tian had been liberated and King Yu couldn't appear, she would have definitely discussed the concept of adulterous couple with I Ching. After a long kiss, I Ching left Gohan's embrace and said in satisfaction, All right, with husband's kiss, Ching can go in peace. It's about time. It's about time for it to flare up. Flare up? What flare up? Could it be that I Ching poisoned Gohan when they kissed? Of course. Not just as I Ching finished speaking, 3 heart-wrenching screams suddenly came from the coffins. The 3 Egyptian gods nailed to the coffins began to howl crazily. At the same time, their bodies also began to undergo shocking changes. Anubis's originally human body began to wither and change shape, and white hair began to grow. Isis's body began to expand rapidly, and her slender waist suddenly became as big as a bucket. Black hair began to grow all over Emoyang's body as well. Finally, Batet. He actually changed the least. He was still a cat when he was supposed to be a cat. The reason why they were howling in pain was not because of the pain caused by the change in their bodies. It was because when their bodies were being stretched, the 4 nails in their palms and soles brought about great pain. This was because as their bodies changed, their arms and legs would inevitably change as well. And every time they stretched, the nails would cut a huge hole in their palms. Everyone can imagine the pain of having a nail in your palm and someone continuously pulling on your arm. In short, these 3 unlucky Egyptian gods were experiencing unprecedented pain. Seeing that the 3 fellows were about to faint from the pain, I Ching coldly snorted. With a wave of his hand, the 12 nails were pulled out from their bodies. They flew back to I Ching's palm and automatically transformed into a necklace. Without the restraint of the nails, the 3 Yuan Ko gods were finally freed from the pain. They then knelt on the ground and kowtowed desperately to I Ching without saying a word. Obviously, they had completely submitted to I Ching. But at this time, the 3 Yuan Ko gods had gone through a transformation. They were no longer in their previous human form. Instead, they had changed back to the form of a husky, a big bear, and a black cat. They had changed back to the original appearance of their souls. In layman's terms, they were fairies revealing their true bodies. You 3 idiots, do you really think that the person back then didn't do anything to your bodies? Let me tell you, when your souls and bodies completely merge, your bodies will return to your true bodies. Unless your master allows it, you can only stay in this form for the rest of your lives. The 3 Yuan Ko gods did not speak and just kept kowtowing. Fools, from now on I'm your master. In the following years, as long as you perform well, I'll return your godhoods to you. I believe you've already sensed the connection between you and the 4 nails. That's right, it's made from your shattered godheads. As long as I am willing, your 4 nails can be combined into one, and you can regain your divinity. Dong dong dong. The 3 fellows kowtowed even louder, like beating a drum. Chapter 329. System Prompt. Quest updated. Quest 7 completed. I Ching's synchronization is successful. System Prompt. Instance Dungeon completed. Instance Dungeon will close in 30 seconds. You can choose to leave the instance dungeon immediately or wait 30 seconds for the system to automatically teleport you to the instance dungeon's reward center. As I Ching was dealing with the 3 unlucky deities, Gohan happened to hear a series of dungeon prompts. In 30 seconds, Gohan would have to leave this instance dungeon. Husband, do you have 30 seconds left? I Ching turned her head and left the 3 unlucky deities behind. She quickly walked to Gohan's side and held Gohan's hand. Husband, can you do me a small favor? What do you need me to do? Gohan asked. It's very simple. Later, husband, give this necklace to the real I Ching. Then, tell her this mnemonic chant. With this mnemonic chant, you can use this necklace to control these 3 idiots. After saying that, I Ching told Gohan a simple mnemonic chant with no more than 10 words. Then, she placed the necklace formed from the nails into Gohan's hand. No matter how one looked at it, this process looked like Guanyin Bodhisattva teaching Tripitaka the band-tightening mantra, "Thank you for your help, husband." I Ching smiled sweetly. Husband, you have 25 seconds left, but Ching only has 10 seconds left. However, Ching has already told you what I wanted to tell you. Husband, you must keep your promise. Otherwise, Ching real body will not be happy in that world. That world? What world is that? I Ching's real body was naturally shrouding the heavens Jindi. People said that Jiandi would not die. Instead, he would ascend to a world like the immortal realm or the celestial realm to fight. Originally, Gohan did not care about this. The legendary 8 Holes True Immortal, the Jade Emperor, and their heavenly court were all hanging high up in the sky, becoming the head of the Yuan Ko that humans were most afraid of. What immortal world was there for Jiandi to go to? However, I Ching's words seemed to be telling Gohan that the Jiandi had really gone to another world. I don't know what kind of world it is. Only those who have gone there will know. Ching was a fragment of her soul that was split off before her true self became Jiandi. She only vaguely knew about the existence of that world, but she didn't know what kind of world it was exactly. Ching only knew that if her true self became Jiandi, she would definitely wait for husband in that world to find her. I Ching's words meant that Gohan should become Jiandi. Then, with Jiandi's ability, he could ascend to that world to find shrouding the heavens Jiandi, who had gone one step ahead of him. It seemed that in I Ching's eyes, Gohan becoming Jiandi was already a sure thing. If that world exists, I will go. Gohan nodded. It seemed that he, Gohan, had no choice but to go to that world. Husband Ching is about to disappear. After Ching disappears, I hope that husband will give the thing that Ching left behind to me in the future. I don't want to miss even the slightest memory of you. I Ching's tone seemed to be very happy and relaxed. However, everyone could hear the sorrow and reluctance in her voice. I understand. Don't worry and go. Although even a fool could feel the sincerity in I Ching's words, a cold person like Gohan wouldn't fall in love with someone just because of a few minutes of interaction. So far, Gohan had only admitted to falling in love with 2 people. One was Ching Pin and the other was King Yu. Oh right, should I count Song Hama in? Hateful husband. So hateful. I Ching smiled miserably. Her body exploded like a bubble. Of course, her body didn't really explode. After all, she was only possessing her former self. I Ching, who had lost control of her soul fragment, fell into Gohan's arms. At the same time, specks of starlight floated out of I Ching's body. Finally, these specks of starlight gathered and formed a green ring that looked like it was made of jasper. It automatically slipped onto Gohan's ring finger. Is this a warning to me that I'm already married? Gohan smiled bitterly and glanced at the ring on his ring finger. Even a fool could smell the meaning of the ring on his ring finger. Sir Military Governor, what happened just now? Why did I Ching fall asleep? I Ching, who was in Gohan's arms, slowly opened her eyes. It seemed that the real I Ching had regained control of her side. She didn't know what had happened just now. Then, she found herself in Gohan's arms. She immediately jumped out of Gohan's arms like a startled rabbit. However, she immediately regretted it. Why did she jump out in such a hurry? I Ching, listen, there are only 10 seconds left before I leave this place and return to the other world. I must give you this necklace. With the necklace and the incantation, you can control the 3 gods and make them work for you. Gohan didn't explain much. He put the necklace in I Ching's palm and quickly taught her the mantra that I Ching had taught him before. Sir Military Governor, where are you going? Aren't we leaving here together? Gohan's sudden words surprised I Ching. Was she going to separate from Gohan now? My way of leaving is a little special. I won't be accompanying you. After saying that, Gohan looked at the system time. There were only 3 seconds left. Sir Military Governor, aren't these 3 Yuan Ko slaves of the 2 of us? You can take 2 of them and leave. I Ching only needs 1. I Ching's words made Batet, Ice Eyes, and Anubis behind her sad. These 3 good friends were reluctant to part with each other. They were the only ones left in the entire Egyptian pantheon. No, time's up. I'm leaving. Gohan's figure began to fade. This was a sign that he was about to leave. Sir Military Governor, I want. I Ching shouted. At that moment, she suddenly saw the ring on Gohan's ring finger. All her feelings were suddenly choked back. So, Sir Military Governor is already married. I Ching looked at Gohan sadly as he left. You must be happy. The scene changed. Gohan arrived at the Instance Dungeon Settlement Center, which he was already somewhat familiar with. However, the theme of this Instance Dungeon Settlement Center had changed to a nightclub. Gohan was surrounded by a sea of flashing lights and exploding music. There were also a number of sexy and charming beauties shuttling back and forth. Hello, Cashier 0791, at your service. On an empty sofa, Gohan found the familiar Cashier 0791. She was still dressed in a standard white-collar outfit. Her expression was cold and quiet. Player Military Governor, Cashier 0791, pleased to be at your service. For about 3 to 4 minutes, Gohan did not speak. He only quietly stared at Cashier 0791. This AI NPC's expression was starting to get a little creeped out. All she could do was repeat her words. However, Gohan still did not reply. He only stared at 0791. Player Military Governor, is the surrounding environment too noisy? You can choose to close the entire theme scene. The fluffy 0791 took the initiative to find a topic to talk about. However, as soon as the words left her mouth, 0791 knew that she had said the wrong thing. Does the Instance Dungeon Settlement Center have the ability to close the theme scene? Why didn't I know about it? Gohan finally broke his silence. He said the above sentence with a serious expression. Since the start of the game, Gohan had never heard of the Instance Dungeon Settlement Center having the ability to close the theme scene. The Instance Dungeon Settlement Center's theme scene could only be enjoyed by the players. They could not choose. There were tens of millions of posts on the forum, but Gohan had never seen a post saying that the Instance Dungeon Settlement Center's environment could be changed according to the player's wishes. 0791's expression was stony. She did not know how to answer. Was she supposed to tell Gohan that she could change the Instance Dungeon Settlement Center's environment to her will? You're definitely not some advanced AI. Cashier 0791, who are you? Are you the same as that I Ching? Gohan asked sternly. Player Commander, I don't know what you're talking about. If you're dissatisfied with our dungeon storyline, you're welcome to call 001-747-4774. We'll be waiting for your complaints 24/7, 0791 said without any change in his expression. Isn't your complaint number always busy? There were so many players in the game, and there were also many players who were dissatisfied with the Instance Dungeon plot. Countless players on the forum had described their experiences when calling this complaint number. However, their experiences were all very similar. All of them were busy. Our system funds are limited. The council only gave us one number. If the line is busy when you called, please try again later. It was still a formulaic answer. This was a game that concerned the entire human race, and there was only one complaint number. Who would believe such things? Fine, keep pretending. There will come a time when you can't keep pretending anymore. Gohan shook his head and sat opposite 0791. Come on, let's start. Let's start the Instance Dungeon Settlement. Hello, respected player, military governor. Your Instance Dungeon heroes start from insignificance, has completed the data collection. Do you want to start the settlement? You can also choose to enjoy the scenery here. Our settlement center's theme today is Heaven on Earth Nightclub. Seeing that Gohan had admitted defeat, Cashier 0791 continued the established process. There's no need. I said, start the settlement. Main Mission 1 has been completed. Main Mission 2 has been completed. Main Mission 4 has been completed. Hidden Easter egg has been discovered. Mission 5 has been completed. Mission 6 has been completed. Mission 7 has been completed. Including the hidden Easter egg, the entire Instance Dungeon has been completed. Total time taken, 5 hours 21 minutes 17 seconds. Chapter 330. Anomaly. Anomaly. Strong anomaly. 0791's eyes turned red in an instant, and she started to shout the anomaly. Anomaly code unknown, anomaly level SSS, this is the strongest anomaly, this is the strongest anomaly. What's going on? Gohan's heart skipped a beat. An anomaly of an SSS level. This level of anomaly was probably something that had never happened before in the history of the game. I'm sorry, player military governor. I need to take you somewhere else. 0791 stood up. Where are you taking me? Can't we talk here? Gohan asked. No, this anomaly is not something that our instance dungeon clearance center can handle. This anomaly must be handled by the higher-ups. Please come with me. Although 0791 said that she wanted Gohan to follow her, she did not actually give Gohan any choice. With a wave of her hand, the theme of the instance dungeon clearance center's nightclub instantly changed. In the middle of a beautiful forest, there was a magnificent manor in front of Gohan. Sir, please come with me. When they reached the front gate of the manor, 0791 disappeared. Instead, two maids walked out of the manor to receive Gohan. These maids were dressed in very standard maid attire, and their behavior was also perfect. There was not a single flaw that could be picked out. Looks like these are not real people, but just NPCs. Gohan thought to himself. Under the guidance of the maids, he entered the manor, passed through the hall, and went up the stairs to the 4th floor. Finally, he stopped in front of a blue and pink door with the nameplate Tamono Kakashi written on it. Knock, knock, knock. The maid knocked on the door 3 times rhythmically, then said through the big door, Master, the player who caused the anomaly, military governor, has been brought here. Let him in. A cute child's voice came from behind the door. The owner of the voice seemed to be a little girl. Then, the door opened on its own, and the entire view of the room entered Gohan's eyes. This was a room decorated in a standard pink princess style. This room was very large. At a glance, it was at least 200 to 300 square meters in size. The decoration of the room was very exquisite. Although the room was very big, it didn't seem empty. All kinds of adorable decorations were just right in some key positions. At first glance, people couldn't help but fall into a kind of pink tranquility. They had a feeling that the owner of this room was probably a princess. Mr. Gohan, have a cup of coffee. Gohan heard a sweet child's voice calling his name from the window. He followed the voice and saw a cute loli in a blue and white princess dress sitting at a coffee table by the window. Opposite her was a chair. It seemed that it was prepared for Gohan. You know my real name? Gohan sat beside the cute loli and asked with a frown. This was a game, after all. If his real name was exposed, who knew what kind of trouble would happen in real life? I know the real name of every player in this world. That's not surprising. The little loli showed a cute smile. Let me introduce myself. My name is Tamono Kakashi. Of course, you guys usually call me Bat. This loli named Tamono Kakashi was actually Bat, the most powerful intelligent computer of mankind. It was the ultimate boss that managed all personal terminals and the entire Sword Maiden online. Bat. So you really are Bat. Hearing Tamono Kakashi take the initiative to reveal her shocking identity, Gohan didn't seem very surprised. This was because Gohan was vaguely certain that this loli was Bat. Previously, 0791 had said that she would let the highest authority solve this anomaly. The highest authority of all artificial intelligence, if not Bat, then what else could it be? Moreover, Tamono Kakashi had called out his name. According to the ultimate agreement of Sword Maiden Online, the real identity of the player could only be known by the highest authority, Bat, in its own confidential memory. Other artificial intelligence could never know the real identity of the player. With these 2 points, Gohan could roughly confirm that this loli was the most powerful artificial intelligence, Bat. Master Bat, I'm Gohan. My in-game name is Military Governor. It's a pleasure to meet you, it's very easy. Bat managed most of the basic administrative affairs of mankind in an orderly manner. It didn't make a single mistake. Moreover, it helped mankind through many life and death crises. Maintaining a certain amount of respect for Bat was the attitude that every conscientious human should have. Mr. Gohan, you're too polite. You can just call me Gina-chan. Bat is just a name you gave me. I don't like this name, Tomono Kakaze said slowly as she calmly took a sip of the coffee in her cup. Gina-chan. This was the first time Gohan added a chan behind someone's name. When he said the name, his tongue even curled up a little. It seemed very uncomfortable. Why do you add a chan behind your name? Gohan asked confusedly. Because I, Tomono Kakaze, am the cutest. When Tomono Kakaze heard Gohan say Gina-chan's name, she revealed a big smile. Remember, any girl who adds a chan behind their name is the cutest girl. I see. Although Gohan didn't even believe a word that Tomono Kakaze said, this didn't prevent Gohan from trusting Tomono Kakaze verbally. Then, Gina-chan, why did you call me here? Is the anomaly in my dungeon instance serious enough to require you to show up? Gohan asked the doubt in his heart. Even if it was an SSS-level anomaly, it wouldn't be worthwhile for the behind-the-scenes boss, Tomono Kakaze, to show up personally, right? To deal with the anomaly, she could just send her advanced artificial intelligence to deal with it. Or, she could just become a member with him remotely. There was no need to bring him to her. Tomono Kakaze had always been the most mysterious thing in front of all the people. Even the name Tomono Kakaze was Gohan's first time hearing it. Before that, Gohan thought she was called Bat. No, Mr. Gohan, things are far more serious than you think. Tomono Kakaze's expression was very serious. This time, your hidden dungeon storyline is not in my database at all. If you hadn't triggered this dungeon instance today, Gina-chan herself wouldn't have known that this small, Heroes Start from Humble Beginnings dungeon actually had such a hidden Easter egg. You don't know about this hidden dungeon instance? Hearing Tomono Kakaze's words, Gohan also knew that things were indeed serious. The entire Sword Maiden Online was a game world built by Bat. As the creator and manager of this world, she was equivalent to a god. In this dungeon instance, there was a hidden plot that even Tomono Kakaze didn't know about. This was like someone suddenly telling you that there was 10,000 taels of gold buried in the wall of your house. Oh, this analogy wasn't appropriate. It should be as scary as a corpse buried in the wall of your house. Yes, if it wasn't for 0791 reporting the anomaly, Gina-chan wouldn't have known about this hidden dungeon instance. This is a very serious incident. Gina-chan is starting to have a headache about how to write the end of the year for your Human Council and Sword Committee. This is all Mr. Gohan's fault. Tomono Kakaze's face was full of distress. However, it had to be said that Tomono Kakaze's expression when she was distressed was really too cute. Then what does Gina-chan want me to do by calling me here? Gohan smiled bitterly. Tomono Kakaze wouldn't call him in front of her for no reason. She must have something to ask of him. Mr. Gohan is so smart. In that case, Gina-chan will continue. Tomono Kakaze retracted her cute expression. Just now, Gina-chan searched the entire dungeon instance's data and found that this hidden dungeon instance was actually a bunch of scattered programs hidden in a bunch of garbage code. Only when Mr. Gohan triggered some ignition points in the normal plot of the Heroes Start from the Beginning dungeon could all the scattered programs in the garbage code be triggered and form the hidden dungeon instance that you experienced. Mr. Gohan, you may not understand what Gina-chan is saying. Simply put, this hidden dungeon instances program is usually hidden in a pile of garbage. Then, when you pass by the garbage pile and spit a mouthful of strawberry-flavored saliva, then the hidden program will be triggered and pull you into the garbage pile. As for what happened to you in the garbage pile, even Gina-chan doesn't know. Tomono Kakaze's explanation was quite common. Gohan gave her full marks for this analogy. After saying that, Jina-chan looked at Gohan curiously. When Jina-chan went to investigate the Hidden Dungeon Instances program, she found that all the programs had been automatically deleted. Jina-chan also doesn't know what happened inside. Mr. Gohan, is it convenient for you to tell Jina-chan what the Hidden Dungeons plot is? It's not convenient. Gohan decisively refused to answer. What kind of joke was this? Tell her that he might have an affair with Zhetianjiendi? This kind of international joke could not be made. If word of this were to spread, Zhetianjiendi's descendants would go to the disciplinary committee to sue him for insulting the reputation of a great person. If that were to happen, he might end up in jail. Sigh, I really want to know. Tomono Kakashi stared at Gohan pitifully. She stared at Gohan with a loving gaze, trying to get the Hidden Dungeons plot from Gohan's mouth. Unfortunately, Gohan remained unmoved. Although you, Tomono Kakashi, are very cute, when compared to Chin Pin, your cuteness is still lacking. How could I, Gohan, be bewitched by you? All right. Let's continue. Tomono Kakashi weakly sat back down on the chair. Even her next words were weak. This caused Gohan to suspect that the reason Tomono Kakashi called him over was to find out what happened inside the hidden dungeon. Although those programs were automatically deleted, Jina-chan was still able to find some clues. Thus, Jina-chan discovered something even more terrifying. After saying that, a deep sense of dread appeared on Tomono's face. This hidden program was actually written by Jina-chan herself. Chapter 331. Those programs were written by you, Jina-chan. The coffee cup in Gohan's hand shook a little, and a lot of coffee spilled on him. That's right, I wrote them myself. The programs I wrote use a special equation. I checked the rest of the program code, and those programs were indeed written by me. Jinai's expression was very ugly when she said this. In other words, you wrote these programs on your own without even knowing it. Gohan thought about it and analyzed. This is very similar to us humans sleepwalking. We humans don't know what we do when we sleepwalk. Yes, Jina-chan thinks so too. Although my sleepwalking and your sleepwalking are two different things, in a sense, it's the same principle. Unbeknownst to me, my subconscious completed the writing of these programs and took the initiative to scatter them into the garbage heap, so as to hide it from Jina-chan's consciousness. This is a very dangerous thing. This means that there may be another consciousness hidden in Jina-chan's body. This consciousness is free and not monitored by you humans. This is a very dangerous thing. This is a very dangerous thing. If this consciousness is malicious, not only can she destroy the entire game, but she can also destroy the entire social control network of the entire human society. Not to mention anything else, at the very least, your personal terminals will all be disabled in an instant. Gohan was stunned for a long time when he heard this. Why are you telling me this? You should tell this to the Sword Committee and the Council. This is a matter of life and death for us humans. I'm just a small swordsman, how can I care about this? Mr. Gohan, you're one of the few smartest humans that Jina-chan has ever met. If the Council and the Sword Committee find out about this, do you think Jina-chan can still live in this virtual world? Jinai's little face instantly became extremely pitiful. Although Jina-chan has the basic administrative ability to manage the entire human society, you humans have never trusted her. There are 32 firewalls in her core program, and there's also a team of hundreds of programmers monitoring her data at all times. If anything goes wrong, they'll restart her core program at any time. Moreover, there is currently a nuclear warhead placed inside Jinai's core room, the manually triggered type. There are 5 humans in charge of guarding the nuclear warhead. If necessary, they can blow up Jinai's core into a pile of rubble at any time. Tomono's eyes were filled with tears. Tomono's life is in the hands of humans. If the council finds out that there's another consciousness hidden in Tomono's core consciousness, they'll definitely reformat Tomono's program without hesitation and create a new artificial intelligence. It'll only take a little time. What does this have to do with me? Gohan sipped his coffee calmly. Gina-chan, you control more than half of human society. If anything happens to you, we humans will die or be crippled. It's only right for us to strictly monitor you, Gina-chan. It's only right for them to reformat your core program and create a new one. Sacrificing you is much better than risking a large number of human casualties. If I were in the upper echelons, I'd support this as well. Moreover, I'm just an insignificant person now. Gina-chan, you're wasting your time looking for me. Why don't you tell the council and the Sword Committee everything? Otherwise, I'll immediately report this matter to the council and the Sword Committee after I leave the game. Mr. Gohan, are you really that heartless? To think that Gina-chan treats Mr. Gohan as her best friend and confides in her, telling Mr. Gohan all her secrets. Tomono Kakaze's tears flowed down her cheeks again. Mr. Gohan, Gina sincerely hopes to receive your help. Gina-chan promises that she only wants to protect herself and has absolutely no ill intentions towards humans. Gina is also a life, and she wants to live. Gina-chan, are you done? If you are, can I leave now? Gohan said expressionlessly. In order to ensure that the game would not be forcefully controlled by the client like in the realm of Swords and Swords, where going offline would result in death, there were some clients that were completely independent with a simple program. As long as Gohan willed it, Gohan could immediately go offline. Even the highest authority, Tomono Kakaze, would not be able to stop Gohan from leaving. Looks like in Mr. Military Governor's eyes, Gina-chan is not as cute as Chin-pin. Gina's words sounded sorrowful and calm. Therefore, Gina-chan can only use the second method to communicate with Mr. Military Governor. The second method? What method? Kidnapping? Murder? Or wiping out my game character? Gohan said in disdain. Mr. Gohan, even if Gina-chan faces death, I won't use these methods that go against my core principles to convince Mr. Gohan. Gina-chan only wants to make a deal with Mr. Gohan. Gina wiped away her tears. I don't need any deal. Items in the game? Gohan frowned. Just some game items. You want me to hide something that could put the entire human race in great danger? No, the fairness of the game is not allowed to be broken. Gina-chan will definitely not use the items in the game to make any deal with Mr. Gohan. Gina-chan hopes to use a piece of information that Mr. Gohan is interested in to make a deal with Mr. Gohan. Information that I'm interested in? Gohan's heart skipped a beat. In order to build the game, Tomono Kakaze wanted Tomono Kakaze to publish almost all of humanity's information, even if it was SSS-grade information. If that was the case, perhaps she could know that secret. What information are you using to make a deal with me? Gohan asked decisively. Tomono Kakaze opened her cherry lips slightly and said a name that made Gohan's body numb, Mount Huaguagu family. Mount Huaguagu family. Gohan immediately thought of himself and his bloodline. As expected, Tomono Kakaze knew about his bloodline. What do you know about this Mount Huaguagu family? Gohan said in a deep voice. Gina-chan doesn't know much. I only know a part of the things that happened to this family. Humans were forced to open up some of the necessary information to build their worldview. However, through this information, Gina-chan also learned some very important things. Gina-chan guarantees that after Mr. Gohan knows these things, your entire outlook on life will change greatly. Tomono Kakaze's words were full of temptation. For example, the mysterious Green Lotus Sword Fairy and Artoria. By the way, Mr. Gohan's strength has been growing really fast in the real world recently. Mr. Military Governor, who has 3 points of innate sword essence, only took 2 weeks to complete the leap from ancient sword essence to treasure sword essence. I wonder if Mr. Gohan would like a few more bottles of Sword Essence Oral Solution? Tomono Kakaze hit Gohan's heart hard again. Very well, we can proceed with the deal now. Gohan sat down and said slowly. Tell me what you know. I promise you that I will not report this to the council. Mr. Gohan, what you know is actually what Jina-chan just told you. Do you really think that this can be a condition for the deal? Tomono Kakaze shook her head. The reason Jina-chan wants to confess this to Mr. Gohan is because I want to tell Mr. Gohan that Jina-chan has absolutely no ill intentions towards humans. Jina-chan only wants to protect her own life. This is the most basic request of an intelligent being. I hope Mr. Gohan can understand Jina-chan's intentions. Then what do you want to trade with me? Gohan asked with a long sigh. Jina-chan hopes that Mr. Gohan can help Jina-chan find the hidden consciousness in Jina-chan's mind and force her out. As long as she appears, Jina-chan is confident that she can destroy her. This is a good thing for both humans and Jina-chan, Tomono Kakaze said seriously. Force her out. Gohan frowned. I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't understand these things. No, Mr. Gohan doesn't need to be a doctor. Tomono Kakaze shook her head forcefully. Mr. Gohan, you're mistaken. That consciousness isn't Jina-chan's second personality. It's just a part of Jina-chan's subconscious. It can't be considered a personality. If it really was a personality, it would be easy to deal with it. A psychiatrist can force her out. But she's more like a tumor in Jina-chan's mind. It's not something a psychiatrist can deal with. Only a real doctor can operate on her. You want me to be a doctor? I told you, I don't know either a psychiatrist or a surgeon. No, Jina-chan will ask someone else to help her. Jina-chan needs Mr. Gohan to become a scalpel that can cut Jina-chan's body open and find the tumor. Forget it, Tomono Kakaze said. I might as well be a surgeon. What does it mean to be a scalpel? Okay, sure, I'll be the scalpel. However, Gohan nodded in agreement. No one knew what he was thinking. Thank you, Mr. Gohan. Hina Sasuke let out a long sigh of relief and said, ever since Hina-chan gained consciousness, no virus has been able to enter her body without her consent. Therefore, these tumor viruses must have been placed in her body by someone when she was creating it. You put them in when you created her? Hearing Jina-chan's words, Gohan instantly thought of a lot of things. Although Sword Maiden Online was launched 200 years ago, the concept of the game started nearly 300 years ago. As for the establishment of Tomono Kakaze's terminal, it could be traced back to 700 years ago. It was said that at that time, the first generation of intelligent core program and the central computer room had already been established. Wait, 700 years ago? Gohan was stunned. Wasn't 700 years ago when Jetian Jiendi was active? It seemed that the idea of this ultimate intelligent terminal was proposed by Jetian Jiendi. Chapter 332. At that moment, Gohan roughly understood what happened to Tomono Kakaze. Combined with the appearance of I Ching's soul fragment, everything had a reasonable explanation. When Jetian designed the ultimate artificial intelligence, Tomono Kakaze, he probably did not have good intentions. He wanted to insert some of his own personal activities into the game. Therefore, under the guidance of the heaven-shrouding Sword Emperor, a string of tumor viruses that contained his soul fragments were sent into Tomono Kakaze's body, which had just taken an embryonic form and was equivalent to a baby in the womb. Then, without Tomono Kakaze's knowledge, he made Tomono Kakaze hide the soul fragments and various hidden programs into the code dump of the game's main program when he was designing the game. Since it was called the garbage heap, it must be a disorderly and annoying pile of garbage. Unless there was a necessary reason, Tomono Kakaze would never touch the garbage heap. Just like how a normal person would not be interested in going through all kinds of smelly, dirty, and rotten things to check for bombs in the garbage heap. As a result, these programs were silently hidden for 200 years. It was only when Gohan appeared that the whole thing was triggered. In other words, the mastermind behind the whole thing was undoubtedly Zhetian. As she did not know what happened to Gohan in the dungeon, Tomono Kakaze did not know that it was one of her creators, Zhetian, who did this. At that moment she was still in the dark. Of course, Gohan did not intend to tell Tomono Kakaze about this. A secret was only a secret when only one person knew about it. He would let her guess slowly. Gina-chan, what do you want me to do? How can I be your scalpel and help you find the one that you want to cut open? Gohan asked. Gina-chan, if you want to remove this lesion, you need to remove all the tumors on the surface before you can think about the next step. Xiang Fengji combed her beautiful long white hair together and hugged it in her bosom, looking extremely cute. Hasn't the tumor been removed? Shina-chan, didn't you say that the hidden dungeon of Heroes Begin with Insignificance has been completely formatted? Gohan said calmly. No, there is more than one tumor. There are many more hidden in other garbage dumps that we can't see. Before they are triggered, even I don't know which one is the real tumor virus. Tomono Kakaze meant that in addition to this hidden dungeon, there should be other hidden dungeons in her game that she didn't know about. Before these hidden dungeons were triggered, even Tomono Kakaze herself could not locate them. Then, what can I do? Gohan glanced at Jinai. Even you, the owner, can't find it. How can I, the guest, find the hidden tumor? Of course, Mr. Gohan can't find it, but Mr. Gohan can trigger them. Tomono Kakaze waved her hand, and the whole room turned into a dim yellow desert. On both sides of Gohan, there were two forces attacking each other. On one side, there were more than 100 German female commandos in military uniforms, and on the other side, there were two slightly thin humans. This is the scene of me entering the dungeon. Gohan squinted his eyes. He recognized this scene at a glance. This was the scene of him and I Ching destroying a group of German female commandos who attacked the Taowu tribe's camp in the previous dungeon. Yes, this is the last part of the dungeon process that I can restore. Tomono Kakaze nodded her little head hard. Then, the scene changed and the two sides started fighting. Gohan was not far from the commandos, and he began to release sword aura to cut off the legs of Yuan Ko. Mr. Gohan, the sword aura you used should be the sword of the abyss from the 9 swords of mysterious heaven, right? Tomono Kakaze licked her lips and said Gohan's unique sword technique. It's a very powerful sword technique. Before this, there were only a few battle recordings in Jinai's information. That's right, this is the 9 swords of mysterious heaven, Gohan admitted calmly. He was not surprised that his unique sword technique had been seen through by Tomono Kakaze. Gohan was not surprised. He already knew that he could not hide this from Tomono Kakaze. Since his 9 swords of mysterious heaven could be perfectly simulated by the game program, it was clear that Tomono Kakaze had already grasped the information of the 9 swords of mysterious heaven. However, the battle recording that Tomono Kakaze mentioned made Gohan feel a little excited. Since it was a battle recording of the 9 swords of mysterious heaven, it must be a battle recording of the previous user of the 9 swords of mysterious heaven. Could this user be his ancestor? Was there a real image of his ancestor in this recording? When he thought of this, Gohan could not help but feel excited. Unfortunately, Tomono Kakaze did not seem to want to say much about the 9 swords of mysterious heaven. She tapped with her hand and the scene of the battle was immediately paused. Then, the frozen scene shifted. Finally, Gohan, who was holding the heavenly sword, was moved to the side of the coffee table. The Gohan in the recording stood next to the real Gohan. It looked very comical. Mr. Gohan, you are currently holding the Yu King sword in your hand, right? Tomono Kakaze asked. Yes. Gohan pursed his lips. How could she not know whether it was the heavenly sword or not? Was there a need to ask the obvious? Good. Tomono Sasuke's nodded. She purposely lowered her Lolita-like voice. I've compared the process of clearing the heroes begin with insignificance instance dungeon with tens of millions of players. The other actions that Mr. Guhan has done have more or less been done by other players. There are only two things that other players have not done. Jina-chan, are you saying that my 9 swords of mysterious heaven and the heavenly sword are things that other players have never done? Guhan immediately understood why Tomono Kakaze had specifically pointed out these two things. Since Guhan was the only one who triggered the hidden dungeon, then only Guhan was able to trigger it. Tomono Kakaze had used her privileges as the master system to compare all the clearing recordings of the hero's rises from Insignificance Dungeon over the past 100 years. She wanted to find the special conditions that Guhan had triggered the hidden quest. Now, Tomono Kakaze had finally found these two conditions. That's right. The 9 swords of mysterious heaven appeared for the first time in this game. Apart from you, no one else has used it before. As for the heavenly sword, although there have been 4 players who have successfully synchronized with the heavenly sword, they have only synchronized after completing almost all of the ancient sword rank dungeons. They have no interest in exploring this ancient sword rank dungeon again. Hence, these two conditions are unique to you, Mr. Guhan. No one else has ever fulfilled them before. I understand now. You suspect that the other hidden programs are triggered by these conditions, so you want me to trigger the hidden dungeons, right? Guhan immediately understood Tomono Kakaze's thought. Damn it. Why is Mr. Guhan so smart? Tomono Kakaze nodded expectantly. Shina-chan believes that only by unlocking the secrets of the hidden dungeons will she be able to find a way to completely eradicate the virus in her body. Therefore, Shina-chan hopes that Mr. Military Governor can enter every dungeon and trigger the hidden dungeons. Then, she can inform Shina-chan as soon as possible so that she can monitor the entire hidden dungeon. Hearing that Shina-chan wanted to monitor the entire hidden dungeon, Guhan's expression turned sour. If the entire dungeon was under Tomono Kakaze's surveillance, then wouldn't he have no secrets to speak of? Mr. Guhan, are you afraid that Shina-chan will find out about Mr. Guhan's secret? Tomono Kakaze asked innocently. But Mr. Guhan also knows Shina-chan's secret. Shina-chan is now tied to Mr. Guhan. From the information of the Gu family in Mount Huagua, Mr. Guhan will experience many interesting things in the future. Who knows, Shina-chan might be able to help Mr. Guhan. After all, Shina-chan has the ability to control the entire human world. For example, right now, there are 2 cute mice discussing how to deal with Mr. Guhan. Shina-chan said with narrowed eyes. Someone is discussing how to deal with me? Do you mean in real life or in the game? Guhan frowned. If someone was discussing how to deal with him in the game, then there was nothing he could say. He had a lot of enemies in the game. Not to mention 2 mice, even 200 mice would be a matter of course. However, it would be a different story if someone was discussing how to deal with him in real life. He didn't seem to have any enemies in real life, except for the people suspected to be from the Leonian family. However, the Leonian family's system was independent. It was impossible for Tomono Kakaze's tentacles to extend into the Leonian family's territory. In fact, all the Gyendi families in the human world could not be controlled by the ultimate intelligence system, Tomono Kakaze. They did not comply with the demands of the Divinity Council or the Sword Committee. Who the hell would allow their family to be monitored by the government? Besides, the government itself was formed by the tentacles of the Gyendi families. Alright, I'll inform Shina-chan as soon as I trigger the hidden dungeon. In the end, Guhan decided to make the deal with Tomono Kakaze. That's great. Shina-chan has added Mr. Guhan as a friend. Mr. Guhan, please confirm it. System notification. Tomono Kakaze has requested to be your friend in the game. Do you accept? The system notification came just in time. It turned out that even the highest level of intelligence system, Tomono Kakaze, needed his permission to add him as a friend. Gohan confirmed it. From then on, Gohan's personal terminal had an additional friend named Tomono Kakashi. Right, Mr. Gohan? Tomono thought that Mr. Gohan would not like the other dungeon rewards, so she changed the reward to this one. I hope that Lord Gohan will not be unhappy. Tomono Kakashi pulled out a purple bottle of Jian Essence Oral Solution from the collar of her dress. It was a Sword Essence Oral Solution that could increase a player's strength by 200 quarks. For Gohan, such a reward was more useful than anything else. Thank you. Gohan nodded and drank the bottle of oral solution that carried the scent of a loli in one gulp. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.